You don't have to do this, Alfredo.
People always say the same thing.
What do they say?
You didn't have to start a podcast.
Welcome back, everyone.
It's Cinema Forecast. It's me, Alfredo, and my good friend.
I'm Connor.
And this is Cinema Forecast, the movie podcast where every month we are randomly assigned a category with 4 movies attached that we feel fit said category. Each week we review one of those movies in the context of the category. And this month we're doing desert movies. And today we're doing No Country for Old Men. And speaking of the desert, we living in the Pacific Northwest are definitely very far away from the sort of climate of a desert. And recently it's been warming up a little bit, which has been nice. And it got me thinking about spring. And spring is kind of like this philosophically like diametrically opposed force to the desert in a way, I felt like.
That's beautiful.
The springing forth of life.
Yeah, and in another way, something I've been enjoying about doing desert movies, because we're still in February, for the folks at home recording these, it's a nice contrast to the gloomy. We even were getting some snow last week and the week before. So yeah, seeing these hot, steamy desert films, it's a nice little counterbalance to the life we're living.
It's like a nice dry heat sort of like sauna for like the mind in a way.
Ooh, a sauna for the mind.
Sauna for the mind, baby. And as I said, we're talking about No Country for Old Men today, based off of the novel written by Cormac McCarthy, directed by Joel and Ethan Coen, also adapted for screen by Joel and Ethan themselves. Pretty fucking stoked for this one, dude.
Me too. This is definitely the darkest film we've watched so far, I would say. And I also would venture to say the most thought-provoking.
I'm going to say this is the best movie we've watched so far.
Spoilers for our tier ranking, but I might agree with you. I might agree with you there. I mean, I will say The Matrix holds a special place in my heart for different reasons. There's some stuff that movie does that makes it maybe even more timeless for me in some ways, but I freaking love this movie. It's so good.
For sure. We could have a whole discussion about The Matrix and what it says about to be human and what No Country for Old Men says about, humanity. But yeah, so as we usually do in these episodes, like to get started talking about our first experiences with the film. I did not see this one in theaters. I do remember, however, watching it on the TV with my dad in his bedroom, like on like HBO or so. I don't know, like what it was definitely on like cable and it was like playing, and so we were watching it like live, which is such a fun, kind of weird experience to think about. Now that I'm thinking about the timing, though, 2000s. Anyway,
yeah,
it's very possible that that's how we were watching it in a way like that. And I remember being so blown away by it and being like kind of a little bit confused, a little bit thrown off by the whole vibe of the film, because I had so many questions about like why. And I think I was even old enough at this point, being like 16, to know like who the Coen brothers were as filmmakers, because I went and saw Lady Killers with my dad in theaters. Fuck. Wow.
I saw that in theaters too. That's
oh
funny.
My god. And so I knew that they like are usually kind of goofy guys.
Right. This is not.
I saw Burn After Reading in theaters as well.
Nice.
Remember that? But yeah, this movie is so I think it kind of stands out in their like oeuvre, like as having this different tone, even though it is kind of a really funny movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely, and there might be a few in their collection I haven't seen, but this is definitely the darkest of the films I have seen by them. But that was something that was surprising rewatching it. There is a lot of good comedic bits between the absolute existential dread.
Yeah, just the like whole like the writing is so good, and I think that's kind of what elevates it above a lot of like all the other films we've seen. I think that I mean, we all know I'm a big Nemo head. I love the writing in Nemo. I think it's appropriate for the age of the audience. But like when when being a fucking film school guy, being a little bit of like a film nerd, film snob, uh, you know, all those things. I think that this one just has that like elevated intellectual sort of bent on the like on the dialogue. No, we're like not like that they're expressing themselves in these like super long with super like a lot of vocab words and shit like that. It's just so intelligently done to feel natural,
Yeah.
but still really fucking sick like we're
Yeah.
watching a movie.
And I think it poses questions in a really intellectual way where I watched this movie. I it- it's funny you were mentioning, like, I remember watching this movie for the first time, but you're mentioning the era. I can't quite picture, like, in my head, I can see it myself watching it on different screens for the first time, and I can't quite picture where I was in my life. I just remember watching it for the first time and experiencing it for the first time. I might have been living with my parents. I mean, that would fit the time frame. Uh, and yeah, I also was very struck by the film, and I think confused is something I would throw out there in terms of just what are they trying to say in certain parts of this film. And I think this is, of the movies we've watched, the most unsure I've come into a film being like, what is the exact message? And I told you before we started, this is the film I've written the most amount of notes for that we've done
Yeah.
so far. And I think a lot of that was me kind of trying to pull out the little pieces of the themes and try to fit it all together. What is the exact messaging here? Because there is some very like heady stuff, like some very um like a lot of big symbolism, a lot of big metaphors, a lot of kind of abstract dialogue that could be interpreted in a lot of different ways. And I feel like after this viewing, this is the most I've felt like I've understood this movie. And I don't know how much of that is just because I was trying to understand it more than usual. But I think this movie has a lot to say, and I'm excited to talk about it.
For sure. This is my second time seeing it. Like the
Oh
first
wow!
I haven't rewatched it since then. So
Damn.
it was really fun to dive back into it. I think before we get too lost in the sauce, cuz it's very easy for us to just fucking expound upon talk about this movie for fucking hours. It is Desert Movie Month.
Yep.
Save the best for last.
Yep.
Desert movies. Um and so we are talking about this in the context of the desert, the setting, and what that evokes. Some of the things we discussed, really quickly, some of the things that I brought up, it's just going to be me fucking up this word for the next month. Cinematographically, it was big, wide, establishing shots. As far as composition, like lonely, like subjects in the center of like a vast sort of frame. Um, we we want those actors to get dusty. We want them to get sandy. Want them to get dirty.
Yeah, we
And boy,
do.
do they get dirty in this movie.
Oh yeah.
I think this movie, a lot of really cool sort of things about isolation as well, self-reliance. Um, yeah, do you want to just chat about some of your themes as well
Yeah,
up
I mean,
top?
I'm being a little more rigid, I guess, so far with my desert themes. I'm just
No,
gonna.
no, this is one thing together.
Hell yeah. I'm using my same 9 themes I used for Tremors. Um, that being hopelessness, futility is one, isolation, sanctity of water, spiritual desolation slash awakening, beauty of nature, silence, man versus nature, Lovecraftian horror, and insanity. And just for those who didn't listen to our last episode, what I mean by Lovecraftian horror is
I think it's like the cold indifference of the universe.
yeah. I think Ant in a Wasteland, like this feeling, of just being overwhelmed by this indifferent universe and what it means to feel like you're just nothing floating in the wind kind of
For
thing.
sure. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, silence is so big in this movie too.
Yes.
Connor was probably crying. No score this movie.
No score except
No score for Old Men.
there is one. This is the first time watching these 5 movies. No, 6. This is our 6th film. This is the first time I actually rewinded because I had remembered no score. It's famous for not having a score. There was one scene with a little bit of music in it, and there might be more than one, but this is the only one I clocked. Because I feel like this is a movie that's so easy to just get so immersed in that like it's hard to notice all the little details, like little sound effects and stuff like that. But there was one scene where I was like, wait a sec, I gotta roll this back. Did I just hear some music? But from those themes, really,
What was the song?
it's just a very like ambient little piece of music.
Ah,
Yeah, yeah. We'll get there. The name of the game for my themes, though, I would say is my number 4, which is Spiritual Desolation. More so than Spiritual Awakening. I think this is a movie about spiritual desolation on a like macro human level.
for sure. Yeah, yeah. Our nine themes. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Uh, and I would say that if I was like trying to kind of give a thesis statement for what this movie is about, I would say this is a movie that asks you to stare into the darkness of humanity, and kind of ponder about it. Like, I don't even think it really gives you answers so much as it gives you things to think about.
Yeah, I think a big sort of examination in this film to me is man and man versus nature, and how man is part of nature. And I
Mm,
think Anton is the ultimate embodiment of that,
that's a really good point.
which are things that we have been talking about, that we talked about as well with Tremors, the whole like man versus nature as a theme of desert, man being so small in this vast expanse. And speaking of which, the fucking cinematography in this film is I'm gonna say probably my favorite of all definitely my favorite so far.
Yeah.
Roger Deakins,
Yeah.
the amazing cinematographer, has worked with the Coen brothers, has worked with Denis Villeneuve.
I mean, it got to be one of the most legendary, right?
Yeah, definitely up there. And love the choice, of course, 35 millimeter. You want to get that grain, and especially in a desert movie, I feel like that's sort of very tactile sort of like look of grain and analog process just adds to the grittiness that is
Yeah.
like the desert.
Yeah, and I think that's something I noticed too. I was kind of like, this movie just has this vibe that I was trying to put my finger on, and I think the way it's shot is a big part of that vibe.
Yeah, I mean, the color palette is also so intentional and beautiful. It is this swath of beiges and yellows, very deserty, contrasted by these like sky blues. Like think about like the faded jeans,
Mm,
like those shots of the sky, the doors of like all the motels. Some really, really, really beautiful color work in this
yeah,
film.
and the lighting, a lot of like playing with the shadows and
Absolutely,
darkness.
yeah, and really good shots outdoors at night as well,
Hmm.
which can be a really difficult time to film.
Yeah,
Those fucking moments of like, and just to get right into the beginning of the movie, of like the like sun starting to rise,
yeah,
like dawn over those like desert hills, was fucking beautiful, dude. And then to have that overlaid with the voiceover of Tommy Lee Jones. Is
yeah.
this our third voice voiceover movie?
Oh yeah. So we had Spider-Man. What
Yeah.
was our second?
Never mind.
Yeah,
I
this
don't
might.
think
I
we
think
had
this
a
is our
second. I
second.
was
Yeah.
thinking of the crawl from
Mm,
friggin'
Star Wars.
from Star Wars. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and beauty of nature being one of our themes. Absolutely, as you were just saying, these opening shots, my lord, looks gorgeous.
Yeah, I was also thinking that the VO plus the big empty shots really reinforce the sort of isolation,
Mm,
the
mm-hmm.
vastness of nature, the indifference of nature.
Yeah, and I think right off the bat, Tommy Lee Jones's narration here is kind of bringing up exactly what I was talking about in terms of there's a lot to dig into here. Just these open, there, it's such a he's talking about the old how they used to do it in the old times, and he's talking about how these the old timers didn't even carry guns, and to contrast his life now, or some of them didn't even carry guns, and how hard that is for him to imagine. And he's also just talking about human nature a bit. He's talking about this killer who uh, killed a 14-year-old girl, and it said in the paper it was a crime of passion, but the killer told him there wasn't any passion in it. And there's so many lines in this movie that are so good and interesting that I couldn't get it all down. I was like trying to get some of it,
Yeah.
but he said something about
Wasn't a
some
crime of passion. He'd been planning to kill someone his whole life.
yeah, and that he would see you be in hell in about 15 minutes, and he was like ready
Yeah.
to go. And Tom Ed or
Ed
Ed
Tom.
Tom, sorry, doesn't know what to make of that. And I think not knowing what to make of it is the question posed by this film.
He is this sort of gruesome, morbid philosopher in a way,
Yeah.
philosopher of the macabre. I love just from the beginning, this VO is not like Anton Chigurh, like blah blah. Not it again, like I said before, what they tell you when you're taking screenwriting classes, like don't do VO, it's overdone. But this is a great example of VO that I really enjoy. I'll say this utilizes the VO better than the Spider-Man, which I said was stylistically appropriate, but this is great. It is amusing. It is like getting you into the sort of zone of like humanity and existence is so brutal,
Yeah.
right? Like there is this sort of like spectrum of existence, and there is the dark part of it is so fucking dark.
Yeah, it's getting you thinking right from the start. And I think the opening montage ends with Anton being
Arrested.
arrested
Yeah.
and brought in, and we pretty quickly get his first killing here, which right from the jump, horrifying, one of the most brutal scenes in the film by itself.
Yeah. Javier Bardem is
Oh my gosh.
amazing in this
This
role.
might be one of the best like villains ever, and a
Yes.
lot of that is the way he portrays this character.
Yeah,
So chilling.
He's been called the most accurate depiction of a psychopath. I think lots of people have
Interesting.
heard that one. A few things that I want to say. I love the production design. It is supposed to be set, I believe, in 1980. He does say this coin is from 1958.
Oh, I didn't know that.
it-
That's great.
Took 22 years to get to you. I love the like late 70s Texas vibe. Again, color palette is so awesome and kind of reinforcing this dusty, sort of older time in the past, very easily evoking like the past without having to flash up the year 1980. Another thing I thought was super interesting is the hair. It was done by Paul LeBlanc, was a costume designer, and the Coen brothers kind of, I think, just talked to him about what they were sort of envisioning or like sort of like where this guy was coming from. And I saw this interview of Javier Bardem. He's saying they're picturing this guy in like a 70s like Texas brothel or something like that. It was just so, I don't know, so wild. But he said he got the haircut and then he's like, sick. I have to spend 3 weeks
Yes.
with this haircut.
That's so funny because I remember, I don't remember where this interview is from, but I saw Josh Brolin doing an interview where he was talking about No Country for Old Men, and he was just talking about how amazing Javier Bardem is, and he's talking about how he's just like the nicest guy, and how sad he was that he had to wear this stupid haircut for the whole set. He was so bummed out. He like didn't want to go out for drinks and stuff because he just thought he looked so dumb.
Yeah, they apparently when they approached him for this movie, he'd always wanted to do a Coen Brothers movie, and he doesn't. In the interview, I guess he says, "I don't drive, I don't speak good English, and I hate violence."
That's funny.
Yeah, and they were like, "Well, that's why you're perfect for this." And I kind of love it. Yeah, I think oh man, it's wild to think, he is a person who chill, like peaceful dude. I feel like as an actor, that must be a really fun opportunity to step into that role, though. But yeah, fucking amazing performance for sure. And the
Yeah.
writing is instantly great. Just the like dialogue is so, like I said, natural, but like it's larger than life enough to like, they just are masters of that. It's Coen-esque is what I'll say. Like their dialogue is so perfect for what they do, and to see it kind of like adjusted to this, a much more sort of like dour setting.
Yeah, and I really wish this is the first film we're doing that is based on a book, and I do wish that we had read the book, or I could say what is Coen Brothers and what is not Coen Brothers. But I'll give credit to Corman as much as I give it to Coen Brothers, because
Yeah, I think that there's some pretty clear stuff like from them there.
yeah, I mean stylistically definitely feels like them, but
And the
I'm just not
performances
sure.
as well,
I have heard the book is pretty different from the movie. I think it's more in the perspective of Ed Tom than Llewellyn, but not positive there either.
Word. I did have a note that this is probably the strongest dialogue. Not even probably. This is the strongest dialogue of all the movies we've seen.
Yeah, I would
Love
agree
all
with
the idioms and sort of metaphors that are used. Um, and then right before he gets fucking killed, he says, "I got it under control." A great sort of like theme stated in
That's a
like
really
a
good point.
visual like and verbal sort of manner. It is this sort of like the cold indifference of the universe to your plans.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, it's a very of mice and men kind of message laid forth in this movie. Um, yeah, the look on Sugar's face when he's killing the cop is some nightmare fuel alone. Just like he's not like smiling. He's
No, he's
just
just
like
like,
yeah, he's just like yeah, cold. It's the face of an animal like killing its prey more than a person.
well, you just said that, so I kind of don't want to say this now, but it is kind of like the look of, I was thinking of like an athlete as they're like executing like some sort of high level maneuver.
Yeah,
Like
focus, I guess. Yeah,
yeah, I was thinking of like somebody fucking dunk it, just absolutely yamming on a fool, dude. Like you just see the like really angry, like, well, not even angry, just like focused,
yeah.
like these faces where there's like you have all of your brain power is going to like you executing what you're best at, which in his case is fucking murder.
God.
This is also the most brutal movie we've watched,
Absolutely.
most visceral, realistic.
Yeah.
This is also I think the first movie we're watching that is absolutely grounded, right? I don't know how you would like. There is no like sort of like.
Oh, that's a really good point.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe fish can talk, but like
Yeah.
Matrix is sci-fi. Spider-Man is also sci-fi of the like superhero subgenre.
Yeah, Matrix, obviously, sci-fi.
That's the first one I said just now.
Oh shit, sorry.
That's okay. Tremors is also sci-fi. Dude, we've been doing lots of sci-fi, dude.
Interesting. Yeah, that is interesting.
Is sci-fi good? We like sci-fi.
I guess we focus
Star
sci-fi.
Wars sci-fi.
Yeah, I thought you had said Star Wars first for some
No,
reason.
no, I hadn't.
Well,
Well, next week we're gonna do another of this sort of
Yeah.
ilk, right? It is funny we went from like Tremors / maybe Finding Nemo being our most grounded movies to like this, just like super brutal, violent fucking film.
yeah, no, it's funny. We were just talking about before this how we kind of did our super like fun, playful movie first in this genre, and the rest of our desert movies are pretty dark. I think there's
Yeah,
more playful things about the last movie of the month, but next
Yeah.
week is definitely also very dark. So buckle up.
from drinking milk to drinking milkshakes? Question mark.
Oh, nice little tease. Next thing I have is
We're watching Good Burger, baby.
Home with a Good Burger. Next thing I have is
But what is that for scene?
yeah, Sigour asking him to step out of the car. He pulls over the guy, pretending to be the police. And I think talking about these themes of the indifference of nature and the universe, I think Sigour here definitely sees people as animals, and his choice of weapon is, an air gun used to kill cattle, as explained later in the film. And here, yeah, again, no hesitation, just stay still for a moment or whatever he says.
Yeah, it's insane, dude. Yeah, but that's so true. I think like it didn't quite 100% register like that, but like there was something so brutal about it, and I love the way you just put that he does see them as sort of his cattle. He almost sees them as his flock in a way, like less so like wild animals, but like more so like like he's almost in this like pastoral role, like the way he
Yeah.
interacts with the gas station
That's a really good
guy
point.
later on. But
Yeah, I think that's one of the most. Sorry to cut you off
No,
there,
go
but
for it.
just you just reminded me. I feel like that's one of the most unsettling things about him is that he's not just a cold-blooded killer, but he has this really kind of perverse code of morality, internal to himself.
like what Woody Harrelson says later on, like
Yeah.
he's got principles.
Yeah, and it's just these principles are so twisted, and it just kind of like it's almost like a mockery of humanity's morality.
Yeah, I mean, he really like feels. I feel like he thinks that he can teach people stuff. Like he is like like an awakened, almost like he has this enlightenment to the like savagery of like the world.
God, I hate him, bro. I love him, but I hate this guy. Like throughout the movie, you just like more and more, I'm just like, oh man, I hate this guy.
Yeah, yeah, dude. Jesus Christ. I think Llewellyn is also like, I love his sort of like introduction, just
Yeah.
like this isolated like sort of setting for
Yeah.
him. he is just like this real like lone wolf cowboy looking type. He's got the rifle.
Hunting a deer, extremely interesting character.
Immediately set up that he is like has the skills of a hunter, that he can. Oh, sorry, my nose was itchy. That he is able to track, which immediately becomes important.
Yeah, well, this is actually the movie that I went back and wrote some stuff in on my notes more than any other movie because I was just kind of looking over some of this stuff and thinking about it. So he's hunting a deer. He will be hunted the whole movie. So the fact that he starts as the hunter and this is a whole movie about him being hunted, basically, it's again kind of this message on the indifference of the universe and like you might be in this position of power right now, but this is about to be flipped on you.
Yeah, it is really a sort of like mirroring of where he will be later on. And I also the cat and mouse of this whole film, just to say it up top, is amazing.
Oh yeah,
So well done.
yeah,
Like we said, we were talking about little cat and mouse in Star Wars and how fun that is, and sort of like the intellectual like sort of escalation
and
on both
Tremors.
sides.
Yeah, yeah. I was one of my big things I loved about Tremors so much, and we saw this in Star Wars was the just how cunning everyone was. And this is all of the major players in the story are extremely smart, extremely crafty, uh, very good at what they do. And so yeah, it's always so fun to watch this kind of chess match
This
against.
one feels much more human, much more real too. Like no shade. Those are just like different sort of styles. And this
Sure.
just because they also make mistakes,
Yeah,
which I love.
absolutely.
Being a big part of like the movie is like the mistakes that are made along the way.
Yeah. Uh, Another note on the hunting, really quick, it just kind of foreshadowing this theme even more is that he shoots the deer, it gets away, and then the camera shot of it running under this dark cloud, like all the deer flee under this ominous dark cloud that's like otherwise covering a completely like lit desert. Uh, and another thing I kind of noticed halfway through is this theme of following blood trails over and over and over again. There's trails of blood that are being followed throughout this movie. And I couldn't help but wonder, yeah, again, does it just tie into if you want to understand humanity, you have to follow the blood trail kind of thing?
Yeah, I really love the visual element of like you can see the fresher blood and like the older blood, and when that fresh blood comes in, he like has a choice to make. And I kind of did think of this as sort of like a call to adventure, where he's faced with this choice of just like staying in the known or delving into the unknown. And the visual storytelling of the dog running away, and then he doesn't follow the dog,
Mm-hmm.
he turns and goes the other way to whatever the dog was running away from. That is really
Yeah.
fucking sick. Like I felt like a like real weight to like that moment where he like turns around and does that. I also looked up a few things about the movie. Apparently for this part, the aftermath of the shootout, they had to buy like higher quality fake blood, because low quality fake blood is apparently like the cheap stuff just made with like sugar. So this stuff that they use is like over $500 a gallon,
Oh, wow.
because they if they had been sitting out there like that, they would have been covered in like bugs if they had the one with like
Uh,
the sugar. Thought
that's really
that
interesting. Yeah.
was a fun little fact.
Yeah. I have written here Llewellyn is hardcore. Very quickly, this is the type of man who goes into a crime scene without flinching. He goes into this. eh, Okay. Then another thing that's amazing about this movie is how much is visual storytelling. How much like we talked about the silence. Like there's so like basically no music. It's just him alone with his thoughts in the desert investigating this crime scene, and we kind of just have to kind of put together ourselves what is going through his head as he's looking through this.
Yeah, it's almost like you start like having like his thoughts, right? Like it is really like that stepping into like the protagonist, like where I feel like I'm watching it and like all like I'm thinking, oh, he must be thinking this or that or this or that, like
Right.
trying to fill in the blanks, which is a great way to get like your brain sort of starting to go, so that like you can start to really consider and give the gravity to these ideas that are going to be presented throughout the film.
Yeah. And he comes up on the guy who's dying, um, asking for agua, which is really sad. Also ties into our theme of sanctity of water. Um, and in a lot of ways will be Llewellyn's undoing, but he doesn't know that yet. And he makes it clear that he's looking for the last man standing. And I have a note here that Earl and Val from Tremors would be proud because this is a man who thinks ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's this sort of like, I feel like this sort of hunter tracker mentality of like, I've seen the scene in front of me and like I know someone left here, right? Like
Right. And
he's able to deduce that. I
and
do also like along with Llewellyn being hardcore, the guy's like, saying like there's gonna be wolves. He says there ain't no lobos. And like, dude, this guy's this guy's kind of an asshole, man.
he is kind of an asshole. Llewellyn is kind of an asshole, and that's actually the point I was going to make about the hero's journey that you brought up. Is that this is this is the most anti-hero hero's journey we've had so far, I think. And you could even make the case that he's not necessarily even the hero of this hero's journey, and it's really more of Ed Tom's hero's journey. Uh, but I think you do see that this is the beginning of Llewellyn's downfall, clearly, because it gets him tied up in all this. But one of the big themes of this movie is our obsession with money, and that he is willing to look past all of this horrible things happening here and willing to even look, he's obviously a really smart guy, but he's not thinking too far ahead about people coming for this money. He just thinks, oh, there's probably some money around here I can get.
He's also retired. He says that later on.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure. I assumed he meant that he had already been retired, but there is a chance that he just means he's retired now because he found $2 million. But I think you're right. I think he was retired, which is, but like what he's retired into, it's not like they're living it up,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and just some more. Like one of the few lines you get through here, just to like kind of put you in his head more and show how calculated he is. If you stop in the shade, and he like figures that
Yeah.
if someone had this money, they'll be under a tree somewhere, and he finds a lone
right.
tree.
He says like you stop to see your own backtrack, but if you stopped in the shade. Very cool, very badass. The two isolated trees in the middle of the desert. It's a beautiful shot.
Yeah,
I think underscoring, I don't even need to say it, but I'm going to say isolation. We got a little bit of the implication of that sanctity of water as well. Like the trees, like it's this sort of like oasis.
yeah.
It is where the fucking like money is.
Yeah, it's almost
well.
like this trap from nature or something, right? Like here is this luscious oasis in this desert wasteland.
The tree of knowledge, dude, the forbidden fruit,
Yeah.
brother.
Oh, that's really good. Yeah, because it's like here is everything delectable about being alive, just sitting there waiting for you to grab it, but it really is his doom.
Absolutely. Upon more of my quick little research, watching a couple of interviews and stuff about this movie, when he finds, I love the way he talks to himself a little bit. Like he says, like one point he says, "Yeah," when he's like looking at the guy.
I was gonna say when he finds the money, just yeah.
Well, then he opens it and he looks at it, and then he like kind of closes it and goes, Yeah. And that was his idea because in the interview he's like, don't you think when he like finds the money he should like say something? And the Coen brothers were like, well, like what? And so he gives them like a few things, and they're like, okay, well the second one. He's like, okay, and then so he goes, And apparently every time they screened the movie, what Josh Brolin said is that he knew where Ethan Coen was because he could hear him laughing his ass off every time.
I do think it's really funny.
So he's like, I don't know if it added to the movie or if they were just fucking with me.
That's really great. I think it adds to the movie. I love Llewellyn's character, and that is the reaction I want from his character. It's just as subdued as possible, but still, like that is his maximum amount of excitement is.
Yeah, and on the note of like what Coen brothers did or did not do, Carla Jean and Llewellyn talking to each other is so Coen brothers. Like that is like a fucking that trademark sort of like banter, that we love to hear.
Yeah. Also, kind of reinforce their relationship is really interesting because Llewellyn's kind of a dickhead. Where'd you get that pistol? At the getting place.
Yeah, all that shit is so funny.
Keep talking like that, and I'm gonna take you in the back and screw you.
Oh my god, dude, I'm scared.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. That's so
No, but
aggressive.
she likes it.
Yeah, that's the thing is that they're like, yeah, they're being raunchy and kind of gross, but in a way that's contextual to the relationship that is kind of their language. You can tell, and yeah, he's kind of dismissive. It's shitty that he is clearly she's used to him not telling her where he's been and stuff like that, and he's very much like mind your business. But there is this kind of playful love there as well.
Yeah, Kelly MacDonald is so fucking good in this role.
Yeah,
I also, if you've ever seen Brave, she plays the main character, Merida.
haven't.
Fun little animated flick that I had an ex introduce me to, and you know me, dude. I love them cartoons.
Me too.
Dude, one of my notes is also uh when he says, "Tell mother I love her," and she
Yeah.
says, "Your mother's dead." Well, I'll tell her myself. That shit is so stupid and corny, but it is not. Like, I was thinking about, like, I was like, why does this work so well for me? It could easily be so dumb, but it is done perfectly. It is cool as fucking hell.
Yeah, that I wrote that line down as well, and it's kind of a question mark line for me because it's like it does work, but I'm also not really sure why he said that or what it means.
Right. Well, I think one of the things that I like about movies, which is this is not, despite it being very like
Grounded.
real and grounded, it's not real life, man.
Yeah,
It's a production, you
totally.
know? And that's like, and I think sometimes in really good filmmaking, you can have those moments that are like reminders of that are tastefully done, where you're like, it's
Yeah.
good. It's good right there, dude. Of course he knows his mom. His mom is dead. I guess the implication is like, is he so twisted, like by this whole like situation and kind of like the money and everything that he's like maybe like having a lapse of judgment. Who knows? But I think that I like my sort of like soft fourth wall break read a little bit more.
Yeah, it's an interesting line to analyze in multiple ways. Not that we need to get too deep in the weeds here, but because the way he responds to her when she tells him your mother's dead is almost like he had forgotten. He has this moment of like, oh yeah, and then like, well, I'll tell her myself.
Yeah.
Real quick before that,
Both of our moms are alive. So I just want to say we don't know what it's like to have a dead mom. Maybe people forget.
maybe forget. Hey, once you got enough money, these facts get mixed up.
I got $2 million, dude. I got all the moms in the world.
I got all the moms in the world.
Put it on a shirt.
Again, this kind of quiet, well told visual storytelling here. I mean, you get one line, but him lying in bed, unable to sleep, and
All right.
all he says is "all right."
All those things they're great and then it happens again later on
Yeah,
in the movie.
yeah. I was trying to think if there's a third time, and I think it's just twice that we have him kind of unable to sleep, and then you get
And
like a
he's
single
burst
word.
into action.
Yeah. And I noted this on our Tremors episode. I gave some foreshadowing for this movie where he could have just stayed home, not done the right thing, and been fine, presumably. But his choice to be a hero is what brings him into this whole mess. And I think that is so sad and tragic, but also beautiful because it's showing that the reason Llewellyn is not cut out for getting involved in this,
Which somebody says to him later on.
is because he is the type to bring someone water when it puts him in danger.
Yeah, for sure. It's it is heartbreaking, but a great idea. And the way that he just goes all right, and you're like, what the fuck is he doing? And then he's filling up the water. This film has really good like insert shots, like a lot of like good procedural shots where like you're seeing people do stuff that do this super efficient like storytelling that work really well with the silence and the themes of isolation. I have a note about the framing of a lot of these shots are so good at evoking that sense of isolation. His lone pickup truck.
Yeah, that shot is
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
And then again, it's useful as well because later on he turns and there's the second truck there, and we see
both
them
times it
popping
looks
his tires.
ominous,
Yeah,
and it's way more ominous the second time.
I love it on the ridge. Yeah,
Yeah.
looks fucking sick. And even like the four trucks in the middle of like the sort of meeting place, there is this sort of like isolation amongst the vastness of like this wild landscape that is so cold, harsh and uncaring.
Absolutely.
It's like they're on Mars, dude.
Yeah.
Hey, you know what? Actually, I kind of like that's something very interesting to me. Mars, like, and desert as themes,
Yeah.
like they're so tied together.
Yeah, I
Like,
kind of wish we would have thrown a Mars movie in here.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll do it next time we do this category. We'll
Heck
throw a
yeah.
Mars movie in here.
Heck yeah. Uh, they pop his tires. They start coming for him. This might be one of my favorite sequences in the movie. Him running away from the truck. Again, I think the choice of no music here is especially like deafening, for lack of a better word, where it's just like him alone in the dark, running with the truck behind him, the lights flashing on him. There's this shot of lightning in the distance. It's just so like chilling. I might have actually gotten goosebumps during it. It's just really intense.
Yeah, this is where I noticed the color palette because you really get that very like that the blue water, the blue sky. There, and again, a lot of this cool procedural shit with something really tragic was which is shooting a dog. I don't want to like, it
Yeah.
is supposed to be very like heavy. I also wonder like is it supposed to make us reflect on the people that we watch die?
Mm.
Because it is I literally saw a letterboxd review where someone was like too many dead dogs for me. And I'm like and I didn't even think about it, right? Because I know that's a big thing for people. But like, I just had the thought, like, there's so many dead people in this movie who die in really gruesome ways.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to like say one thing or another. I just think it's something to think about, right?
Right. Yeah.
But the whole procedure of him cleaning the gun and like loading it to
Yes.
shoot the dog is
Yes.
phenomenal.
Such great tension. I I'm one of those people actually. So my thoughts on just like why do animal deaths hit so hard in movies? And I think it just comes down to like they don't know what's going on. They don't like this dog. I actually have a note about this dog just being this dog was trained to kill in terms of spiritual desolation and like a commentary on society. Like here's this like sweet loyal animal being trained to be a killing machine.
Man, and I could make this argument that the guys who let the dog loose are what also like
Yeah,
that.
yeah, totally. That's a good
I
point.
did want to make a comment. I am bilingual. My first language was Spanish. My parents are Peruvian, and this is the first movie we've watched that prominently features Spanish because Texas was a part of Mexico. It is culturally still very Mexican. There are lots of Mexican people that live there. It'll always the American Southwest, California, and Texas. They'll always be so closely culturally linked to Mexico. And I thought it was very cool to kind of see that element in the movie. Also, this cultural exchange in this like desolate place is very interesting to think about. And I think it speaks to I had these ideas on like self-reliance and southern culture, more maybe specifically like Texas culture, because there is this idea of what is proper and there's this idea of like etiquette and this idea of isolation and self-reliance, but a little bit of like because you're in such an isolated place you have to like slightly depend upon one another.
Mm.
And I think this is really like is perfectly underscored with the like scene with the gas station attendant, which is later on. But it was just something that I was already starting to kind of think about at this point, just like the different like cultures coming into play on the screen that we see, and like sort of their ideas of isolation and that stuff.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point on just the amount of about in a movie that's so much about like kind of isolation and like I said, like desolation of the human spirit. There is a lot of human interaction and a lot of like moments of just kind of chance encounters, uh, passing chance encounters that like play a big role.
Dude, so many like one-on-one dialogue scenes
Yeah,
too.
I love it.
It's very cool. I just thought about that. I hadn't thought about it previously. Like there's rarely like
Multiple people talking at once.
yeah, I mean there's the scene that is going to that is going to happen like later on where like they fucking oh shit, is the gas station scene right after he shoots the dog?
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Oh wow.
That is the next scene. I just had one more note before we move
Yeah,
on.
go for it. Sorry.
No, you're good. Just quick thing, sanctity of water. It was the river that saved his life
Yeah.
here, got him away from, and it's kind of random. Like, it's just been complete desert everywhere else, but right over this ridge is a little bit of water that lets him get, far away enough. And what's so sad about this movie is that a lot less people would die if this river wasn't here and Llewellyn just died here, because so much of this movie is the violence that follows Llewellyn trying to get away.
Yeah, wow, that's so true. Um I love it's also like the sort of scarcity of natural resources, a theme I brought up in the Tremors episode, the like focus on resources. And now that I'm thinking about that again, we also have this whole sort of obsession with money.
Hell yeah. Well, we have the shopkeeper scene, one of the most iconic scenes from this movie, if not the most iconic.
Yeah, we watched it in film school.
It's so good, man. Again, it was one of those scenes where I just like couldn't write enough down because like every line is so good here.
Yeah. The gas station attendant, his name is Gene Jones, and he is like incredible in this scene. Like the naturalness
Yeah,
like with
of his
which
performance. That's such
he
a good point.
executes
He's
it
definitely
is
like a bit overshadowed by Javier Bardem, but yeah, definitely like he brings it.
yeah, I'd say watching it this time, I definitely didn't feel like that.
Nice, that's awesome.
It felt like such like a two-handed like execution.
Right.
Also, he's eating nuts. This guy is nuts.
Yeah, actually, that's really funny. That was my next point. Was one of my themes is insanity, and it's just like if you didn't think Sugar was insane before, this is the first time you're really getting inside his head a bit. And oh my god, this guy's freaking crazy, man. The one of the first thing that sets him off is you married into it.
Yeah.
He really doesn't like that this guy married into his business. That's like to him, it's like, oh, you didn't.
And he chokes like when he says it because he's eating the nuts and he kind of like chokes.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
The mounting tension is so well done. It's really simply shot. It's just like this sort of like back and forth of them just like talking and very very specific like insert shots like with the like crumpled package on the counter.
Yeah, that
I
shot
hate
stood
that
out to
he's
me as
eating
well.
the whole fucking time. I hate it. It's so and you can hear him like chewing on the nuts. It's such like a specific choice and it like was driving me insane. And then
Right.
the sound of the sound design in this movie is amazing. It so reinforces the sense of isolation and these like the way that I don't know how they did it specifically, but just like the silence, but the crumple like
Yeah.
suddenly
And again, just like bringing out the silence more through the sound design because there's no
Yeah.
music or anything, so it just like contrasts it even harder.
Yeah, I put this is a master class in filming. It's so well done. There's another thing I noticed. I don't know if this is intentional, but all the rubber things behind him look like nooses.
Oh, interesting. I didn't
And
notice that.
I was like, oh,
Probably
dude.
intentional,
Little haunting there.
given just how meticulous everything else feels in this movie.
Yeah, I will say there is one thing that stands out to me in this scene, which is that when he says it's either heads or tails, it sounds like it's like ADR.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's just like there's like a change in audio quality that like made me like go back and watch it again. I was like, oh, but as you were saying about his mind, like a peek into his mind, don't put it in your pocket or it'll just become another coin, which it is. What the fuck?
What does that mean? Yeah, and just some other.
That's how crazy people talk. I'm sorry. That's how
Yeah.
that's how people who are like suffering through some sort of mental unwellness talk. You know, like when you speak to people who are having like psychotic episodes, that's what they fucking sound like. They say,
right.
they say this is true, but the opposite is true. Are the two true? You're like, I'm talking like the Mad Hatter right now, dude.
Yeah, he is so unsettling. Yeah, it's like everything else is crazy, but kind of falls into this weird kind of set of principles he has. But that line, yeah, that also sticks out to me. It's just like, oh, you're like kind of like riffing this as you go, and you're like excited. Like he's so into how philosophical he sees
Yeah.
himself, and it's just like, oh boy, you are extremely problematic. So I really like the whole setup here with the coin toss, where and I have this down as Lovecraftian horror, kind of fitting down into everything else we're talking about, the indifference of the universe, which is what's the most you ever lost in a coin toss? And then he's like, well, I have to know how like what I'm when I'm winning or something along those lines. And he's like, I didn't put anything up. And he says, yes, you did. You've been putting it up your entire life. It's like just like the way it flips this mundane conversation into a struggle of life and death, where the shopkeeper only kind of understands what's happening and is just kind of slowly realizing more and more, as they put it later, that he won the jackpot here.
Yeah.
With this insane person. And he's like, well, I have to know what I stand to win. You stand to win everything. Call it. Oh my God, bro.
Yeah, great scene, really well done, super well written, super well acted. Love the performance. That might be one of the performances of the whole film for me. Like
Yeah.
I would put it in my top 5 of this movie. Just that gas station attendant, Gene Jones. That was just his escalation from, and again, like these things I was saying about Southern like hospitality or like etiquette, like what's appropriate. The guy is like just like, asking him a question because he noticed he was from like Dallas. I work in the hospitality industry, and these things, people love this shit. You make someone their favorite drink and give it to them as they sit down. Oh my god, dude, they'll melt in the palm of your hand. You remember where they're from, their name. People love this shit. People eat this shit up. Not just in the South. In general, I feel like people love to like be remembered in this sort of way. And you see him immediately be like, stay out of my fucking business. And he reacts and like sort of like, whoa, dude, man, I'm just like trying to make casual conversation. And he tells him like,
Yeah.
if you can't like engage with me like this on a human level, then maybe like take your business
Or
elsewhere.
he was just like, I don't know what else I can do for you. Yeah. And
Yeah,
I think the question was simply like, you getting like weather up there right now? And he's like,
like he
up
asked them if it's
where?
gonna rain like up in
Yeah.
Dallas because he noticed that's where his car was from.
Yeah.
So like again, he's like this very like sort of like human touch, and like Anton Chigurh immediately fucking like rejects that, and he is like disgusted by it. It is this like sort of like very like quotidian, like everyday thing that's below him because he's
Yeah.
an elevated intellectual
Ugh.
that sees like that we are just like going to be wiped out by the
Right.
chaos that is nature.
And I think it shows a lot of his sadistic side too, where he's a very practical killer, but he's also, there is this side of him that just enjoys playing with this man.
Dude, the psychological torture.
Yeah, he wants to feel like the predator hunting its prey here.
I think one of the reasons the performance really like hit me is because it feels like what I would do if I was in that situation. Like I have been working at a job and somebody walks up and like, or I'm like at a table and I'm talking to someone and they start posing philosophical questions to me when I'm just trying to do my fucking like 9 to 5. What the fuck, dude?
Yeah, that is a good question. How would you react in this situation? And I think Anton Sugar is scary enough that I would just be like, at the end, like, all right, flip the coin, man. I guess let's find out.
Yes, it's so good. That's what's so compelling about it. It's so real, man. Like that's what I would be acting like, and I'd be like, if I just get him to flip the coin, he'll fucking leave, right? Like,
Yeah.
am I gonna die right now?
Yeah. Oh man, scary. And I think that's why one of the reasons that it's just so effective is that this could just happen. This is just this guy doing his day-to-day life, and here comes this dark force of nature.
Let's just do an entire podcast episode. No, fuck, a whole show just on this scene.
Yeah, we could talk about this
It's
for a
so
long
good.
time.
And again, like with this is the color palette I'm talking about. Like it's all beiges, but you have Chigurh in this like fucking like dark sort of like a jacket. So he is really like sort of striking, like in the middle of the frame as this like evil presence. And I don't use that word lightly. I don't use that word lightly.
Yeah, this is an evil man. And to contrast this scene, the next scene is really interesting because this might be the only time we actually see Anton Sugar playing nice. In that his nice is that he's keeping up kind of like this image that he's working with these two guys when they take him out into the crime scene. And this is where he gets the, what's it called, the responder?
The transponder.
Transponder. and he's kind of like having just the lightest banter with these guys, which is like such an interesting twist on what the previous scene, what we just saw, and something we already noted this the dog being mentioned. This is like mentioned 3 times here because it's not really mentioned with Llewellyn, but it is focused on the dogs. And then here, one of the guys with Sugar is saying that's a dead dog,
And he
and
goes, "Yes, it is."
that's what Sugar says. Yeah, and then the next day we see uh, Tom out here
Oh,
with
they shot the
the
dogs.
police. Yeah, and again, they're the focus on the dogs. Yeah.
Um, I also like the line, "Those are some ripe petunias." It's like silly banter, but it works with the delivery. I feel like they do such a good job casting these movies as well. Um, but yeah, and then he shoots the guys though. You know, like it's very funny. Like we do get this sort of like lighthearted side of him, but then boom.
Yeah, and it's so creepy. He does this a lot, or he did this with the guy where he was like, just stand still for a moment. He loves to give orders, and people listen to him because he's so cold, or like he has them hold the flashlight, and he's like, okay, give me the flashlight, and then shines it in their face and kills them
Yeah.
both.
He's a fucking maniac.
He is. Uh,
Tommy Lee Jones, Tess Harper in the scene, great together as Ed Tom and Loretta Bell. I like his wife. Like I feel like it's a
yeah,
well executed wife character. You know, I think we all are aware of the stereotypes and a lot of the complaints that can be had about wife or significant other characters in film. But I think that this is like well done. She's not a major character.
yeah.
She doesn't need to be,
She's
but
only
like
really in 2 scenes, I think,
but
right?
she's kind of like felt, you know, like
Yeah,
I really love the first scene between them. You can see he's kind of like really fucking sick
this job and the
of this
horrors of
shit,
yeah,
dude.
this
He's
horrors of
like of the
humanity.
world, and you know, dude.
Yeah, quick note. I just because I just noticed it this time, and I'm a massive Breaking Bad fan. But yeah, his wife, Tess Harper, is Jesse's mom in Breaking Bad. Kind of fun.
Very fun, very fun. I did want to tell you because I thought you would think this is fun. So the guy who plays Wendell, his name is Garrett Dillahunt. He studied journalism for his undergraduate.
Oh,
Do you want to know where he went to university?
where'd it go?
Come on, guess.
University of Washington.
He did
Oh,
indeed.
cool.
Yeah, Wendell is a
Go
great
Huskies.
Wendell is a great sort of like foil or like counter to Ed Tom. Like I love the way Ed Tom will just talk about like these like gruesome things and like he'll like philosophize on them, but he'll also be like very cold and analytical. And like Wendell is just like, oh jeez,
Yeah,
that's
this is definitely where the most comedy in a film comes from. I think is between these two.
yeah, but feels like real. He's a
Yeah,
goofy guy.
it feels natural. Well, he's kind of the naive, like he's not the movie's called No Country for Old Men. He's not the old man yet. Like
Yeah.
he's not disillusioned like Ed Tom is.
I think it's also interesting because he's almost like the more like real character, where Ed Tom is like this old philosopher, like sheriff, which is kind of like, in a way, it's like working with someone like Anton Chigurh, right? Where he's like, what does it all mount up to? You know, us sitting here dispensing slushies, scooping fries. You're just like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? I'm getting paid minimum wage so I can buy an Xbox game, dude.
Yeah, yeah, and I have written here.
The cold indifference of the universe.
Yeah, well, and yeah, he has that side of him, but I also love that he is just like so good at his job, and a lot of it is just like he again visual storytelling. He doesn't even feel like he needs to say it until his partner brings it up, and he's like, "Yep."
Yeah. Probably must be. He says shit like that.
Yeah,
I just,
probably must be.
the way he talks is awesome. Tommy Lee Jones does a great job with this performance. Friggin' love it, dude.
Yeah, and this is one of the kind of more tragic themes of this movie as well, and it has a lot to do with Ed Tom's disillusionment is that they're forever one step behind Anton. And if,
Yeah.
on a more meta, what does that mean? Like justice is always one step behind the true evil nature of the universe, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah, he is a person who is good at stuff.
Oh,
Yeah. His attitude is super interesting. It's a resignation like to the way of the world. Like he is surrendered to like I have a note that perhaps it's an awareness of the cold indifference of the world to the machinations of man. You know, like he is kind of just like doesn't really matter what we try to do, like, you know, but at the same time he's still trying, which I kind of love, like because he has this like sort of like it's like nihilism light, you know, diet nihilism, but like he still like wants like to do a good job.
Yeah, yeah, it's more just like kind of being burnt out, doing his best, and feeling like it's not really making a difference, which is kind of this Lovecraftian horror, right? Of just you are a small blip on the radar, and the overwhelming forces of darkness are forever above you.
Diet nihilism, because who cares about calories?
And I I think Coen Brothers do have an like kind of I don't want to say fixation necessarily, but there is a recurrent theme in their movies of nihilism.
Existentialism, I would say, more generally, like
Yeah,
maybe more absurdism in a way,
sure.
sort of like to try to place meaning onto all of this is absurd.
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, I feel like it. You can kind of see it because there was a big sort of absurdist comedy movement, like in over the past like few years, and you do kind of. It feels familiar to me in a way, like that, like sort of Coen Brothers tap into. It's like world is fucking absurd. It is, and sometimes it's silly, sometimes it's disgusting. You
right.
know, all the time it's everything.
Yeah, and there's usually two different ways to look at that in storytelling. There's like the romantic route of, the hero that'll come through and save the day, and then there's the more naturalistic route, which is usually a more pessimistic kind of like life goes on mentality. Oh, and I do have the line here from Ed Tom. Well, I think yeah, his partner says something along the lines of when they're investigating the crime scene. Uh, there might not even be any money here, and Ed Tom says, or there might not even be any money involved in this. And Ed Tom's like, yeah, and he's like, but you don't believe that, do you? Probably I don't.
Yeah, the way he talks, probably I don't like almost like he's nihilistic to his own thoughts. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
but it's great. A great like linguistic little like
Yeah, there's a
touch.
lot of that. It's funny because yeah, there's so much like improper grammar in this movie, but the dialogue is so intellectual and deep that it has this kind of like contrast with it that's
Yeah.
even more
Yeah,
charming.
I think it is just very natural.
Yeah.
Very, very natural sounding.
Next up, I have Anton showing up at Llewellyn and Carla Jean's house. This scene is very unsettling. Him just kind of he comes in with the air gun again.
Yeah, I do like the lady at the trailer park as well. I think
Yeah,
that's later, but I was just
right
we were
after
talking
this.
about
Yeah,
performances
yeah, she is good again.
and her like verbal sort of pattern, you know, like we can't give out no information. It just sounds great.
Yeah, and the fact that she's like saved by the flush of a toilet too is just like extra creepy because he's kind
Yeah.
of inching closer to her, and you can tell that he was about to do something horrible, and then he hears the toilet, and he just kind of leaves.
Yeah. And I mean, this is the best proof that we have he's a psychopath when he's in their trailer
And he drinks milk.
because he's just going to drink like a whole gallon of milk.
He pours himself a glass of milk. He does.
Does
find
he
her-
pour it? He
Yeah.
just takes, I thought he just took the whole jug out.
No, because maybe because I remember that the glass is still sweating.
No, he says it's still sweating.
Right? Was it the
The
jug?
whole jug is
Okay.
just sitting out there.
Okay, you're right. Um,
But it is cool the way we get his reflection
in the
TV.
which is mirrored
Yes,
very
later
soon
on
coming
with
up.
Ed Tom.
He also finds their phone records, which is the piece he needs to get an idea of which direction they're going, because that is kind of how he tracks down Llewellyn.
Yeah. Very crafty little fuck.
Crafty asshole.
I like that when he's talking to Carla Jean, she says, "I'm used to a lot of things. I work at Walmart." It's fucking gold. I also this is where I have a note that Coen Brothers movies have S tier dialogue.
Yeah.
Like just always deliver on
Yeah.
that front.
I agree. And she does say here, I got a bad feeling, Llewellyn. And he says, well, I got a good one, so it evens out.
It does like feel very like it like reminds me a little bit about like of how my parents talk to each other or like how I've seen other old couples interact and stuff, you know, the woman is very like will be very sort of like genuine, and like the guy is always being sarcastic and like, kind of like trying to make everything into like some joke or stupid pun.
Right.
Um
Well, he's got that's one thing that's really interesting about Llewellyn that is kind of just like hinted at is that this is a guy with trauma, and because he was in Vietnam.
yeah, yeah, I'm sorry I laughed. I just like I love the part later on where Woody Harrelson asked him if he was a nom. He was like, yeah, he's like, yeah, me too. He's like, what's that make you, my buddy? This is so fucking funny.
Yeah, but just that there is this kind of he kind of has this deflective personality in general where he's not really willing to face his fears consciously. Like he doesn't want to say he's nervous about this. He just says I have a good feeling about this. But he's scared. Like
Yeah, I don't believe him. I don't
yeah.
believe
Oh,
he has a
and
good
we didn't
feeling
even
about
mention he
this.
got shot. He gets shot 3 times in this movie, which I think
Yeah.
is purposeful to show you that this is how willing how far he's willing to go. Is that he gets shot, but he's not like willing to give up the money yet, and then he'll get shot again later, not willing to give the money up.
I love these things that you have to track throughout a movie are always good shit to me. Like he has like when a character sustains an injury early on, and we sort of track that throughout the movie, where like and you're kind of constantly being reminded that they're like that they have that, like the way that he ends up like treating it throughout the movie. Then later on we have this very like sort of like procedural scene of like Chigurh like dealing with his injuries. But yeah, I love that shit. Those little moments of that, like, cleaning, wrapping, like that shit just kind of really puts you in like
Yeah,
the griminess of it. I kind of
I agree.
reminds me of, we're doing like a D&D campaign right now that you're DMing, and it's very like survival based,
Yeah,
and that nitty gritty of like, okay, how many rations do you have? How many torches do you have? This is that kind of movie, and I like that shit for
yeah,
this. Like that, it is like, and again, talking about resources, right?
yeah.
The resource management, which sounds kind of silly, but like for real, like is really cool sort of concept to have in like a movie where he is like he has all this money, but like he has to like take care of his body. Like, what does he have at his disposal?
Absolutely. And just kind of showing again the hardship that they have to go through in order to win this prize and what they're willing to put themselves through. Getting into that nitty gritty also just shows like this is our greed. Like this is humanity's greed that he's willing to, go through all this.
Yeah, and I mean his feet get injured, right? Like his feet are bloody, right? Like,
Right.
is it from waiting, like from running through the like pools of blood that he's left behind?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, dude. Think about that sometime. Why don't you? I think when he calls, when they call, I'm not sure when the scene is, but when Carla Jean's mom is when she's talking to her on the phone, I immediately recognize the lady's voice. The actress's name is Beth Grant. She was like in Donnie Darko, Speed, and
Oh,
Little Miss Sunshine. I argue she's the funniest character, actually.
she is funny. Yeah. The next scene I have is the cop showing up to Llewellyn's place again, kind of mirroring that. I love that Ed Tom doesn't pull out his gun here, and he's just like, "I'm right behind you." Like he obviously, again,
Yeah.
he's over this. He knows that there's no one in there. He could just tell based on the scene, and he's not worried about needing his gun out, but he lets the other guy kind of take charge there and like comes in casually.
Yeah, he is so over it. He's not even gonna draw his fucking gun. But I think it's also a good setup for towards the end
When
of
he
the
does
movie.
pull his gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I noted that too. It's very, very solid setup here.
It's like jazz, man. The notes you don't play are just as important.
Baby.
And yeah, he's like visually getting into the mind of this killer by assuming the same position where he sits down and he's like drinking. Like
he does drink from the same
drinking
milk,
the milk,
which is kind of unsettling. That
dude, they're sharing
both.
the water of life. Dude.
Yeah, it's a little creepy. Yeah, the whole setup here of Ed Tom being like, now that's aggravating, and his partner being
Yeah.
like, what's that? Oh, crap! I just spilled. uh, the jug is sweating, and he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, sheriff, that is aggravating.
He was just here.
Yeah, we
Like,
gotta circulate this." And he's like, "What do we circulate? Man who drinks milk?"
yeah,
Like,
I love that shit.
good.
Really good. Love how just over it the dude is, and he's fucking funny, dude.
Yeah, and then we got the same mirror shot of him sitting in front of the TV with the light coming through the window. They're just framed in the darkness.
Yeah, that's the shot that's like he is trying to like step into this guy's mind.
Ooh, yeah, that's a good call there. I was kind of trying to figure out what the symbolism of the duality there is, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. It's him like trying to step into the mind of a killer so that he
yeah,
can like cuz that like he has that to him, right? Like where we
yeah,
see his sort of like he's a guy who is good at this job
yeah, totally.
despite being burnt out, you know.
Yeah, I love that. So Llewellyn gets to the hotel.
And we see him I think treating his those injuries that he sustained,
Yep.
like I was saying. Some cool shots of that.
It's also called the Regal Motel. And I was wondering if there's kind of like a little bit of irony there, like here's your throne you've claimed with your 2 million, like this, like everything that goes down here.
You're a fake king.
Yeah, like it seemed kind of intentional to me, but I don't know if I'm reading too much into it. Uh,
Nah, man, it's a movie. You can never
well,
read too
yeah,
much
again, like
into it.
with a movie like this, that's again so meticulous, it just feels purposeful.
For sure.
Yeah, and I love all the visual storytelling coming up here of all of the like there's so much happening at once because there's three sides coming into clash at this hotel, and it's all just through visual storytelling that it's set up exactly what's happening. There's no dialogue or anything. It's just uh Llewellyn comes back, sees that there's a car that like that's a little sus. Sees I think he sees that the curtain is a little off. Um and he tells the taxi driver like take me to another spot. Uh and I love that the taxi driver has like a bad feeling here. Yeah, we already brought this line up, but you're already in the jackpot and I'm trying to get you out of it.
Yeah.
That whole setup's so good. We see uh oh, well, even before this, we have him hiding the money, which is another great plan.
Yeah, for sure. Like it is very cool little like procedural thing again. We see him pushing it into the duct and sort of moving it, making so much fucking noise.
Yeah, I do wonder how loud that is.
Well, as we see later on, all the fucking rooms around his room are empty, so
Yeah. Oh, and I think Anton also calls Carla's mother around this part and figures out. Well, actually, I don't actually remember what he figures out from this scene. He does call her. He basically tells her to expect Llewellyn and Carla Jean or something like that. But I'm not sure if we actually get any confirmation from that.
I do also think there's this random shot where he's driving and he tries to shoot a bird.
Yes.
And I feel like that is a great sort of commentary on like man versus nature. You know?
Yeah. I would also again I think.
And it gets away from him.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting choice
I think
too.
one of the comments of this film is that despite him thinking he is above this, I think what I think is that he wants to be part of the chaos. He wants to be like nature personified, but he's not. He's still man. He's
Just
still
a dude.
subject to that sort of like the chaos
Ooh, that's a really good
will come
take
to
there.
take him.
Yeah, I love that, and I do love this. Yeah, like I said, kind of one of my main themes is spiritual desolation, and to me, like, is there more spiritual desolation than just killing because it's there to do? You know, like he
Yeah.
has no motivation to kill this bird, but tries to kill it anyway. And this is actually the scene when he tries to shoot the bird that there is the lightest bit of ambient music here. And it's funny, yeah, there is a composer on this, Carter Burwell, and I just think it's a really I hope he goes around being like, I did the soundtrack for No Country for Old Men, and people being like, wait, what?
Yeah, pretty great. I love the like old school tracker too. Like it is like sort of like a counter or a timer or like a count, I mean, or like a timer in a movie like in Tremors. We
Yeah.
had the count of the
Yeah.
worms. We've had timers in other movies like with Finding Nemo. I love that sort of shit. Kind of like ratchets up the tension really nicely. Gives a really easy visual / auditory storytelling tool, as we will have those beeps later, that in the sound design just sounds so fucking like when he gets closer, the beep, beep,
Yeah, yeah, and it does, again, visual storytelling and I guess audio storytelling, it does, like, show how he locates exactly which room
Yeah.
the money's in.
It helps him like close in on like the bad guys. They got this tool now where they're able to find the good guys, and that's scary for us as the audience.
Absolutely, and speaking of, yeah, the old school technology here, I didn't actually realize this was in the '80s, and I do think that's really interesting because I looked it up, and the book came out in 2005, so it's a really interesting choice, like, that it is set in the '80s, that he's
Well, specifically 1980, I think, is the year it's set in.
yeah. So, I wonder why. I don't have any thoughts there, I don't know.
Wait, the book isn't set in that year?
No, I think it is, it's just interesting that was written 20 some years later, so he like, something about the setting he thought was important for this story.
For sure, for sure. I mean, I think for the sort of drug smuggling like aspect of it, it does really sort of represent a big shift
Mm,
because I think it's right before like the crack epidemic, and
mm,
I think like drug usage wasn't like maybe really seen the same way. Maybe it's that sort of point of moral deterioration
yeah.
that like Ed Tom and the other sheriff are talking about later on in the movie.
Yeah, that's a
You
good
know,
point.
I perhaps it's sort of like this marking point where like that he felt was appropriate.
It might be also kind of the transition of the old and the new with the big, like, burst of technology and all that, and, yeah, a lot of counterculture movements, but there's counterculture
Especially at that
movements going
time,
on.
like in like a rural place, I think. Like,
Yeah,
place like those places in Texas felt like probably didn't feel quite like, cosmopolitan places in the 70s, right? They probably felt very similar to the 60s and the 50s.
totally. The next line I have was, from Ed Tom's partner, "Wasn't no bullet." They searched the dead body, that Anton left behind, and Ed Tom poses like, "Do you think he was digging around in there?" Well, I don't want to picture
Yeah.
that, and neither do I. uh, and then another funny line. He tells him that the DEA is going out to the crime scene tomorrow and asks if Ed Tom's going to join them. And any new bodies accumulate out there?
Yeah.
Well, no. Then I guess I'll skip it.
He's a real like sarcastic asshole.
Yeah,
Like imagine that's your like fucking coworker. You're like, okay, dude, I get it.
I get it. Yeah, yeah.
I get it, dude. Okay, just yes or no would be fine, but thank you.
Yeah, he's pretty condescending. Uh, and I love again we jump back to Llewellyn. A lot of great visual storytelling here as he goes to get a tent because he wants poles. And at first he just asked for tent poles, and he's like, "Well, what kind of tent?" And he's like, "I changed my mind. Just give me a tent." And he's like, "What kind of tent?"
The
The
one
kind
with
that
the
has
most
poles.
The most
The
poles. He
most
said.
poles.
Yeah.
Really funny.
And we also get him sawing off the
Just
like
about to say.
shotgun, taping it up. Again, a lot of cool little insert shots, this procedural sort of shit, which really puts us into the like moment by moment survival aspect of this film. That like ratcheting up the like cat and mouse, classic CNM situation.
Yeah, dog.
Dude, it does become, I was gonna say at one point it becomes a dog, cat, mouse thing. It
Oh
is
yeah.
already, right?
Yeah.
Because we got Ed Tom is sort of like the dog chasing the cat, which is Anton Chigurh, which is chasing the mouse.
Slash the cartel. There's
Yeah.
kind of two cats chasing the mouse.
Yeah, and then you got JB on the run.
It's a good call.
Josh Brolin is so good in this, dude. It is also
Yeah, we
like when
haven't
you see
said.
him doing like interviews, he's wearing like a backwards like hat. He's like, yeah, man, just like totally.
Yeah, he
chill.
gives off like big hippie vibes.
He's like super chill, and then he's like goes and does all these like very like
masculine.
like straight sort of
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm like a cowboy guy,
Yeah.
man. Yeah, it is kind of a reminder of like, oh yeah, he's just playing a character. He's not just like, so oh, I'm always a cowboy. Like he is, playing a role, which he plays really well, I think, in this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So good at being silent, just staring at
Yeah.
that face with that mustache.
It's just one of those subtle roles, and I think subtle roles often just get really overshadowed by the more like emotive or expressive performances. But I would say both Josh Brolin and Javier Bardem are very just extremely subtle roles in this.
Yeah, I think Javier Bardem definitely has the opportunity, has a little bit bigger moments for sure.
Yeah, well, he's more unnatural. So he has a
Yeah.
bigger role to play in acting wise, just because
He's like
he's
the
not
age.
quite a person.
He's the
Like,
agent of Cthulhu,
yeah, yeah, this dark force of
a
nature.
resident of Lang, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah. I at some point here coming up, yeah, it's when he takes his shoes off. Anton jumping ahead a little bit, and he's sneaking over. I have written down that this dude is the Grim Reaper.
When he's fucking dual wielding, dude.
Yeah, it's pretty sick. He also, yeah, that part of the Grim Reaper title for him is fitting because basically everyone who sees him in this movie dies.
Yeah, I mean,
If you
there's
see
even a
him,
comment on
yeah,
it later on, like, "Wow, you saw him and you lived."
yeah, which is very creepy. But yeah, he's
So
just kind
now
of this.
are we getting to? So we see
He gets
Lou.
a second room.
Yeah, he gets the second room behind, and he's like fishing for the money, and then we have Chigurh set up with the friggin' tracker
Yeah,
as it beat. Oh, dude, that's so great.
yeah, when
And
it
then he
pulls up
like
on the room.
he gets like a look in his eyes, and he's like looks
Yeah,
towards the
he goes a
motel.
little too far,
Yeah,
and then he goes back and
it's so good.
dials in. Yeah,
No dialogue, just
again, yeah,
perfect with the
visual
beep beep
storytelling.
beep beep. Something that was set up and is a great fucking like fun payoff throughout like the movie, like multiple times really.
Yeah, I
And dude,
also,
it's so quiet outside,
yeah,
and like he's clanging in there again, dude, and it's like
they're tense.
oh, and you see him outside in the silence, and you're like, dude, he must hear that, right?
Yeah, and I love that Anton does the whole, again, just like cunning procedural kind of setup you're talking about here is Anton practicing exactly what he's going to do based on the layout. He picks a room that has the same layout as 138, the room he's going to bust into, and he practices busting in there and exactly what he's going to do
Yeah,
and what are the likely hiding spots and all that. A man with a plan.
yeah, definitely. And also his interaction with the like all the little roles here are so well done. Like the lady at the hotel with her and with Llewellyn, both of those are just well done. And I love like we have the setup of the little map of the rooms, and then it's like brought back, and that's how he kind of like he looks over it and figures out this whole sort of like layout thing.
Absolutely. Uh, this is when, yeah, Anton busts in.
Yeah, like all the silence,
Yeah.
and then suddenly an eruption of violence, dude.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I would think if I was waiting for someone to come back that I had to kill, I wouldn't have my guard down as much as these guys do. There's 3 of them in there, I think, and they are not ready for this fight at all. Anton busts in, absolutely wrecks them immediately. There's the one guy who kind of runs out of the bathroom who could have gotten him, but it just, terrible aim in the panic. I think he has like an Uzi or something. Goes down. And here's another theme. I don't know if this is already, it's weird to call this a theme, but it's a consistent thing that happens throughout the movie is people sitting down, like, especially on beds after some big scene and thinking. And there's a scene here that I thought was strange. After Anton kills them all,
He takes off his socks.
he takes off his socks, which
It's
is
fucking
weird.
dude. He's a psychopath.
Which is weird. And then he sits on the bed and he just kind of sits there and thinks for a while. And he does
sits
that
there
a
and
couple
takes
times.
off his socks. What the fuck is wrong with him?
And this is where he figures out the vent
Oh,
plan.
and it's a really good shot because
Yeah.
it's just the empty frame with the vent in the background, and then he like rises facing like not towards it, and then we see him turn towards it. He pulls out the coin, again the coin, and like twists it. We see the scrape marks and all these like really like very efficiently and beautifully shot. Fucking love that.
Maybe I'm connecting it a little bit since you brought up earlier the reflection in the TV and how they had them both sitting down and thinking, and him and Ed Tom trying to get into the mind of Sugar. I wonder if that's what Sugar's
He's
doing
doing
here.
for
And it
Llewellyn.
works, right? He's trying to get in the mind of Llewellyn. Where do I hide the money?
Like almost like by taking off his socks, he's
Because
like
Ed Tom does this again at the end of the movie, sits on the bed and also sees the vent has been opened. So
Yeah.
there's this kind of running parallel here that's interesting.
yeah, they're trying to get into the mind of their prey in a way.
Yeah.
I love how we cut like the cut to as well to the guy driving him. Shouldn't be doing that.
Yeah, I love this little scene.
This guy's name is Matthew Greer. I love his performance. He's like genuinely concerned and like kind of like chiding him, like,
Yeah,
dude,
yeah,
don't
he's
don't
wagging his finger at him a
like
bit,
don't
yeah.
fucking do. And like it's funny because when he says shouldn't be doing that, you're like, yeah, dude, you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. And then he's like, oh, and then he means hitchhiking, right?
Yeah,
But it's one of those things where that's not really what he's saying in the film. Like
yeah.
that's what the character is saying in that
He
specific
says
moment.
something
But
about, like, a man of your age too, where it's
yeah,
just like, "You should know better than this. It's dangerous."
yeah, yeah, exactly. Then he
Uh,
goes to the new place with the cute cat, right?
yeah.
Got a kitty. Kitty
Yeah,
alert.
there's, like, a lot of cats in this movie, actually, and I'm a big cat guy. Own
Yeah.
two cats myself.
Later on, there's definitely lots of cats, dude.
Yeah,
Some of them are just outlaws.
next up, I actually have the introduction of, Woody Harrelson's character,
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Carson Wells, who I freaking love. This guy is so funny. Uh, he comes into this dude's office. Oh, what is the actor's name? The kind of boss. He's actually unnamed in the script.
Stephen Root,
Yeah, dude, I love this actor.
man who hires Wells.
Yeah, that's all. That's his name in the script, which is funny. But he comes in, he sits down in the chair, and he's like, "Oh well, I didn't tell you to take a seat." And Carson says, "You strike me as a man who wouldn't want to waste a chair."
Yeah.
Which is just
Some
so
good
funny.
banter.
Really good.
This guy's really fucking cocky though from the
Oh
beginning.
yeah, yeah. Well, he is also kind of like Sugar in that he likes to feel like the intellectual superior. And he's enjoying messing around with this guy. He's enjoying kind of it's a power game he's playing with him. And he has that line to him too where he tells him he first he asks him to validate his parking and he's like, I'll take that as an attempt at humor.
Yeah.
Again, he's just kind of messing with him, and then he says, I counted the floors and there's one missing. We'll have it looked into, which is really interesting. Are they saying this is a hidden floor in the building? Like, or is there something I'm missing there? Or is it the 13th floor thing?
Potentially. Who knows? I took it to be sort of this like thing of like he knows Sugar too well to the point where it's like rubbing off on him, where he's like kind of got this like unstable psychopath thing in him.
Yeah, and I think I won't talk about this too much because I don't think they give us too much here, but I do like there's this kind of established history between him and Sugar, and you wonder what is this world that is being tapped into here? Like, is this guy just a like kind of contract for hire, like a detective specifically for crime lords,
He seems like another hitman.
like kind of like a fixer?
Yeah, he seems like he's like yeah, like he I mean like maybe like a less psychopathic killer, but a guy who's pretty much willing to do whatever it takes for the right amount of money.
And it's just it's interesting his knowledge of Sugar and how he kind of reveres him, but in a this guy is horrible. He also kind of downplays him a bit. Just like he's just another run of the mill psychopathic killer, but there's plenty of those around. But yeah, I just find that even though it's not touched on, and I'd be curious if this is touched on in the book at all. Just like how do these two know each other? Have they had this kind of like an encounter in the past? Like, is it just?
It seems like they run in similar circles, right? They're getting hired by different crime organizations to do this stuff.
Yeah, it's like there's enough to infer there on.
It's
how
something
it all
that we
makes.
see in different media is like these sort of like, or also maybe in just like stories of real life, these sort of people employed by different organized crime outfits who do jobs that are obviously things that are often that would mean employing fucking people who are not well psychologically,
Yeah.
like people who are willing to do all this sort of like killing for hire, people who take like pleasure in it. And I think it's sort of setting up as well that he is like of that subculture. He is one of the like wilder, more unpredictable, again, trying to embody nature sort of dudes.
Absolutely.
I do, when I was talking about like being a proper and like etiquette as well, where it really struck me was the scene where Llewellyn comes into like the new motel and he gives the guy like money to like keep a lookout for him, and he says, I ain't asking you to do anything illegal. And it is this it got me thinking about this whole idea, like, Western expansion, these very isolated places, and it's like everybody minds their own business, but there's a certain like little like just a mild expectation of like taking care of your neighbor or being like polite and shit. So Llewellyn is kind of like which is funny because Llewellyn is dragging a lot of people into this who he doesn't
Exactly.
apologize to, but he shows that he has this sort of like Southern propriety where he is like, yes, like let me like, hey man, don't worry, I get it. You don't want to know my business, I don't want to know yours, but like, could you like help me out, right? And
Yeah.
the guy seems to accept, but it is also a cool like setup visually for like the dude at the desk with like the cat for later on when he is pursued, I think as well.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a big part. I think, what would you call that? A concierge, the guy who greets you. I feel like that's also, yeah, a big part of the tension that kind of leads into this big showdown. And
Yeah.
just a quick note on that is we talked about that briefly already, but I do think it's a good point just on the theme of spiritual desolation, and that we do kind of see Llewellyn subtly having a lot of spiritual desolation in this, in that, yeah, he got involved in this, and people are dying in his wake wherever he goes, and that's not enough to make him turn back or give up. He's willing to try to get the money that bad that he's willing to let these people die in his wake. Or, he probably tells himself like, yeah, well, no one else is going to die, or it's not my fault, or.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe this scene as well with him giving him the money and saying like I ain't asking you to do nothing illegal. I mean, it serves a practical purpose, but maybe it's kind of showing this sort of like duality of like, oh, people will say these things, but then their actions really don't conform with that sort of like thing, right? Like, oh, people will be real proper and like they'll speak to you and be polite, but like, when it comes down to it, like they'll sell you out like
Yeah.
in a second, right?
Yeah, and I guess at this point no one has really died that he knows about chasing him. It's kind of this sequence where
Yeah.
several people die. Yeah, this is the second scene we get with him
There
in
just ain't
bed.
no way.
Yeah, there ain't no way. Yeah. And
And the room is all like beige and yellow, dude.
yeah, I'm glad you paid attention to color palette stuff. I wasn't as locked in on that.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for, dude.
Thanks, baby.
I got glasses.
Yeah, okay. I wouldn't call this a plot hole because it still makes sense, but there is part of me that wonders because he knows there's 2 million in there, so presumably he did count it, or at least like maybe he just looked at the stacks and what
Yeah, I think you probably did that.
what amount of money was being used. But like I kind of would have thought he would have picked out the bills and seen if there was a tracker in there, but like it still makes sense.
Back then, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Seems like pretty forward-thinking sort of stuff.
Sure. Well, but like I just meant not even looking for a tracker, but just if he would have taken the money out at
Right.
some point.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Seems like
But
Don't-
they
don't got
did
time
cut
to,
out
yeah.
the middle of
Yeah.
the stack too, so it was like
Yeah.
hidden in there. You had to flip through it to see that. It's
I mean,
there.
maybe you just peeked down and he like counted one column, right? And
Yeah.
like put it in the middle, whatever.
Yeah, and I also noticed this is kind of a dick move on the cartel's part.
They put the ones.
Yeah, they put the ones around the transplant. So if you do find it, it's also giving you the middle finger of like this is not the full money. Like
Yeah, it's I do love that he's like he pulls it out. He's figured it out, and it's all this sort of setup starting to pay off with the like clatter down the hallway,
yeah,
the red light blinking, this like the sound design again really beautifully done, super silent,
yeah. He
and
calls
then
the
the ringing
concierge.
of the phone
Yeah,
in the distance, and you like
Yeah.
when you see him pick up, he like dials it, and you just hear ring on his end, and then you hear it off in the distance. Super subtle, super well done, and it's just like this absolute silence.
yeah, such good
And then
tense
the
escalation.
beeping approaching the door, beep, beep, and then the fucking shadow of the
Ooh.
foot, like the feet under the door.
Yeah, and
Click of the shotgun, dude.
the way that the shadow, because you see him standing at the door, but the way that the shadow, I don't even know why this would happen this way, because I guess he's leaning against the door, but the way that the shadow takes up the entire bottom of the door when he's about to shoot out the knob.
I thought that he might have turned the light off in like the like hallway,
Maybe.
because like you see his feet, and then like Llewellyn is looking, and then it goes completely dark. And I love also we have it set up the thing with the fucking doorknobs, and he doesn't know this, right?
Yeah.
So he's like sitting there, and I'm thinking he's gonna hit with the fucking doorknob.
Yeah, and I would like to think I would be more off to the side. Just if they did come in with a gun, even though I didn't know about the knob, I would still be like, well, they're probably going to first look right in front of the door, so I shouldn't be right in
Yeah,
front of the door.
maybe it's just like that's the best shot he'll get, right? Because he is using a shotgun as well, and so perhaps it's something like that. And again, this is like a movie that is aware that it's a movie, so like perhaps it's just the best sort of
Yeah, well, rule of
blocking,
cool.
right? Yeah, it
Again,
looks awesome.
it looks awesome, and it also plays into why he can't get a good shot on Anton, because he immediately gets hit with the doorknob and panics and shoots the gun and then decides to run.
Being a Coen Brothers movie is the enemy of the nitpick, really. No, I'm just joking. That's not true. But again, yeah, rule of cool, dude. I love the, and then boop, he does like in fact get hit with it. Those little things, you know, where you're paying attention makes you feel smart. Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, filmmakers, for making me feel smart.
And I think it's really interesting. He escapes out the window, but then he goes back into the hotel. And they don't really explain what his plan was here. I guess he was going to see if the guy was there, if he could call the police. Maybe he was just trying to get around him. Like, but it's interesting that he kind of circles back and sees what he can do in this situation.
Perhaps it's the morbid curiosity, you know, like
Yeah, maybe.
who the fuck is this guy?
You get the spilled milk. I wonder again if that's a theme. The milk seems to be coming up quite a few times. The cat drinking the spilled milk. This is the scene where this is a very spooky shot where he's running down the alleyway and Anton's in the window behind him trying to shoot him. And he just fires once. And at first you don't even think he hit him until he gets around the corner.
Yeah,
The bullet went straight through.
this happens at the 60-minute mark, which I think I've referenced before. There's a thing called Sex at 60.
Oh, yeah?
This is our Sex at 60, dude.
Yeah, you know what's so interesting
This is
about
like a
this
romantic
scene?
film. They're in love and they finally make love to each other.
Yeah, I have written here that in a lot of movies, this would be like the climax of the film. And in a lot of ways, this is the setup of their subversion here, where it feels like this is a promise of their final showdown or something. Like this is the setup. So we get one showdown and then their main showdown will be later. But this is kind of, their first encounter.
No,
But
the
this is their only
universe-
encounter. Yeah.
The universe is cold and indifferent.
Yep. He waves down the car. Driver gets shot.
Yeah.
This whole scene of him driving the car blind while the car is just getting wrecked by bullets, super intense.
I love the whole, it's like the cat and mouse finally come like full on, like where we're seeing it. The choreography, the blocking and the timing of everything is so impeccable. Like some of it is like some of the timing shit you're like, what the fuck? Like it is just like very like film visual storytelling stuff, right? Where it doesn't have to be realistic. It's just like what is most visually like appealing to convey these ideas in that moment. And it just like like this whole scene moves so well. I love it.
Yeah.
And like again, we've been like sort of familiarized with the like setting. Like I said with Tremors, like we have this like a little bit of a visual map, right? Enough to like have an idea of where everything is sort of going in this scene. And then we get the following the blood trails again.
Yeah, he crashes, gets out of the car, kind of posts up waiting for Sugar. Again, yeah, Sugar spots the blood trail, and that's right when he's following it. He also clicks for him. Again, getting into the mind of his prey. He's like, oh, he has me, and he jumps.
Yeah. He realizes the perfect moment, dude. Realizes at the perfect moment, and then Llewellyn is following his blood.
Yeah, almost got him. Oh, one thing I do want to point out here is video games, especially, but a lot of movies also kind of misrepresent the range of a shotgun and make it seem like you need to be like right up on someone. But like shotgun's still like a 30-foot range to be pretty accurate or something like that. So I do love that we have him like still hitting Shigar from across the street.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Then Llewellyn goes across the border. This is a pretty funny scene, even though it's dark. Like it's very like the comedy in this is still very dark comedy.
Yeah, the guy, he says, and give me he asks for the jacket, then he gives him money, and then he's like, give me the beer. And the guy's like,
How much?
How much? And
Brian,
give him the beer. Brian's a fucking asshole, dude.
Yeah,
He's also he's so fucked up, dude.
Yeah.
He like fucking throws the money and like fucking pukes.
Yeah.
Like, bleh. Oh god, dude.
Yeah, and I was wondering about the puke, if that's just the trauma of the situation, or is it his body is like dying here?
Yeah, I mean, I've never been shot. I'm not sure. I've never been attacked by a dog
Yeah.
and shot and cut up my feet
Yeah.
walking through the desert. Also, I love that when this happens and he's at this sort of like very dark like point, like there's howling in the background, and it just made me think again, there ain't no Lobos.
Ain't
Well,
no
I mean, it's
Lobos.
just I feel like it's kind of like there is this idea of him kind of like almost like Llewellyn is like saying, "Oh, there's nothing like there's no lobos, there's no predators to be
Yeah,
like
there
worried
are
about."
predators.
And
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, there always were. And like
yeah,
at
that's
that
a really good
moment where
call.
he's like in this dark point and you hear the howling, I'm just like, yeah, dude, they're coming for you,
Yeah,
buddy.
I'm sure that's intentional. I didn't notice that. Good eye, or ear, rather. I this might be one of the funniest scenes in the whole movie is waking up to the mariachi band,
Yeah,
which is really
yeah,
funny that these guys are just like, oh, here's a homeless dude,
yeah.
like let's wake him up with our music.
And he hands him $100 and asks for a doctor.
I love
Pretty
that.
good stuff. Pretty good stuff. Um, and then this is one of my favorite like procedural scenes in
Sugar
the.
stealing the medicine from the pharmacy.
Yeah, we see that he's injured, right? Like, and just like it comes into frame, like his like bloody leg, so perfect.
Yeah,
But yeah, him blowing up the car and walking into
the
the
shot.
pharmacy
Yeah,
before the car
it's one of
blows
my
up.
favorite shots. I mean, that's definitely practical, right? Like that looks amazing. The
Yeah,
explosion with the shattering of
it
the
is fucking
windows.
sick.
It looks
It
really
did look,
good.
you know what kind of looked like it might have been digital is when he shoots the deer at the very beginning.
Oh yeah. Well, I would hope so.
Yeah, you could build a fake deer, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, it has a very like realistic reaction.
Yeah, but it did look like it could have been. Could look like it could have been Didge. But yeah, this fucking shit, all the like nitty gritty of him cleaning his wound and everything
Yeah.
afterwards, very, very fucking cool stuff.
And so I'm glad you brought this up earlier. And I kind of touched on this a bit too. But I was watching the scene and I was also like, this is cool. But like, what is the purpose of this scene in the movie? And like I said, I kind of touched on this earlier. But I do think they're showing like through how methodic he is that he's done this before and that this is just part of his life. It's a brutal life. This is what he's willing to do uh, to get to be in this world, to live in this world. This is the place he goes to often.
Yeah, I think it shows a mastery of his quote unquote craft. I also think it builds tension. Um, I think it's just the minute details again are just sort of this like this is a life or death situation. And again, it's setting up it's not just a life or death situation for Llewellyn. It is for like Anton Chigurh. Like he's been playing this game for a while, but like
Yeah.
I mean, dude, one day collections is gonna call, like and you're gonna have to fucking cash that check.
Yeah. I think next we have a little scene with Ed Tom and his partner again.
And he's hella grumpy.
Yeah, and he tells him that the car, or no, I think it's his secretary who tells him this actually, that the
Yeah.
owner of the car has been deceased 20 years. And she's like, "Do you want me to look into the Mexican cars?" And he's like, "Oh Lord, no." He's like, "That's not going anywhere. There's no threads to be found there." And then I don't know exactly how we transition into this, but again, I have for my spiritual desolation theme, he sees the truck driving with the bodies in the back, and it's like
Yeah.
untethered and flapping about. And the way that the truck driver kind of responds to, like he's just kind of laughing about it all, it's just like, oh, oopsies, and I think that just kind of shows the disrespect for life and kind of the, like, in terms of, yeah, spiritual desolation, just, this is just another day of the job.
It's all these like new kids with their no saying please and thank yous. As soon as the ma'ams and sirs go, the rest will follow.
That's what this movie's really about.
I mean, it kind of is in a way. Like,
Yeah.
I think there's a read of it that doesn't have to be so fucking like, lame and like old person-y or like boomerish, right? There is like sort of, I think the read of like the coldness of humans towards each other, right?
Yeah.
Like, and I think it is this contrast of like cold, indifferent universe. Like, that doesn't mean we have to be cold and indifferent. And it's not really like saying that. It's just saying we like this movie is really kind of just like I feel like making you think. It's not like saying like you got to be like this, right?
Yeah.
Like it is making you think that like we are kind of cold and indifferent towards our dead, towards each other in a way.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I brought up at the beginning is that one of the reasons this movie is so thought-provoking is that I don't really think they're trying to give you answers here. They're really just posing these questions and kind of asking you to look inward.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, which is a word I say a lot, but it's because you say things that I absolutely agree with.
I do say it too. It's funny how language rubs off on each other, where like I can't like I hear us both saying the same things a lot in these episodes. I'm like,
Hell yeah.
we're just kind of copying each other, but like chicken and egg situation of where it came from
Hell yeah.
first.
I was born first, so.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, you are the chicken and I am the egg.
Yeah, and then I think it's him waking up in the hospital bed with Woody Harrelson across him,
Yep.
and we get this whole thing, which I think lots of people probably do this whole thing, the chigger sugar thing, which is a fun little exchange, a little commentary on the guy's name. I wonder if it's in the book. It would be good for it to be in the book because then you have an idea of like how it's meant to be pronounced.
Right. Yeah, I was actually thinking the same thing too. Even when I was just kind of like, wait, how do I pronounce this for the podcast to make sure I don't mess it up? Uh, yeah, and again, spiritual desolation. Both of them were in Vietnam, and now they are in positions of life and death. Society setting us up to be this way to a certain extent.
I think we also like set up. He's like a meticulous guy. So is Anton, and he was a welder, which is a very sort of meticulous profession. And he had a high level of mastery in it as well. Like he could do any kind of welding, and it is interesting to see Woody Harrelson kind of challenging him, like cast iron.
What did
now
I say?
I didn't say braise, and he's like, "Did I say braise?" And then he's like, they're going through the whole thing, and this is the part where he says like, "Oh yeah, so were you in Nam? Yeah, so was I. What does that make me? Your buddy?"
Yeah.
Which is great because it gets brought up again later on, but the context is different. So we see Llewellyn sort of like shift in his delivery, right? When later on when he's trying to get across the border.
Yeah. This is kind of the first time we really see Llewellyn get shook here. Is when Carson floats to him. How do you know he's not going on his way to Odessa?
Yeah.
And you could tell this was just something he hadn't even thought about, that he would go after his wife, because what kind of psychopath would just kill my wife for no reason?
Yeah, for sure. It is one of those things of like everyone in this movie is clever, but like not.
Well, it's hard to get your mind into the mind of someone like Anton.
Right, for sure. Absolutely. But I like everyone has flaws. Everyone is fallible, you know? Like, I also really love this is the part where he says, might say he has principles. He's not like you. Which is like, fuck, dude. This is like the first time we've really had it like kind of like outwardly stated. Like, Llewellyn, not a good guy. Like, you took the fucking money, dude. Like, you know.
He left the guy there to die, too, until late at night, and it was too late by then. So even though it was his heroic, like, the part of him being... The aspect of him that is heroic still wasn't heroic enough to save this guy.
Yeah, absolutely. And then is this, then after this we have Carla Jean and the sheriff in their exchange?
Yes, yeah, and
this is
one quick line that I liked is... he doesn't talk as much as you. I'll give him that.
Yeah,
that's what Llewellyn says.
Pretty funny. It is good, which I do like because I think this movie, Woody Harrelson, his character, I was kind of like annoyed a little bit by him, but I think that's kind of a little bit of his vibe. He's got this cocky thing, like, you know, going.
Yeah.
So that line really paid off for me. I was like, yeah, dude, this guy loves to talk.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he does like the sound of his own voice. You can tell he is really smart, but you can tell that he prides himself on that a lot, and he wants you to know that he's really smart and that he's kind of above the game in the same way that Anton thinks he's kind of above you morally.
Yeah, for sure. As I was saying, Carla Jean and the sheriff, I think they have my two favorite ways of talking throughout the movie. So them talking to each other is my favorite dialogue in the movie. Yeah. I just love to see them in a conversation, and the way that they have this like levity to the way they speak, but they're speaking about some really like harsh realities.
Yeah. And Ed Tom, you kind of figure out that he's being a little manipulative here because apparently this isn't even a true story, he reveals later.
Yeah.
But he gives this whole story about he says, even in the contest of man and steer, the issue is not certain.
Yeah, it's a great line. And and he talks about the air gun, right? At this point.
Yeah.
I also had in this man versus beast, a man versus nature,
yep.
man versus man, right? It is this like great example. And I think there is no line to better like encapsulate sort of the vibe of the movie than that sort of line in the contest between man and steer. The issue is not certain.
Yeah, and going back to we stated this a little bit earlier, like the whole idea of the plans of mice and men often go awry. It is just like no matter what your plans are, doesn't matter because it can just flip on a switch just like that.
He also does the kind of like old guy thing where she says to him, "Sheriff, why are you telling me this?" And he says, "I don't know. My mind wanders."
Yeah. Which is like I don't even yeah, it's such an interesting because yeah, all the dialogue in this movie you can read so much into, but it's like how much of this is scripted on his part? How many times has he said this kind of story to people? How much is it him trying to just manipulate her very specifically, and how much of it is it just him just like talking to her about things?
Right, for sure. Absolutely. I love again, like I was saying, there's some really beautiful blues in this movie. They're like almost like the little like bits of hope, I feel like, throughout the film. And the shot of the fence with the clouds and the beautiful blue
When
sky.
Carson finds the money.
Yeah, when he
Yeah.
finds the case, just super, super pretty shot. And the way that you can kind of see the fence in it, I feel like it's very like visually evocative. Like, this beauty, but like kind of like chained away. I think like is pretty easy to read into like what that might mean, right? Like he was so close with like the money and everything, but like
Yeah, yeah,
not quite
and
there.
yeah, I love that he doesn't get the money immediately because, again, he is arrogant. He thinks that, well, I already got my plan. I'm going to go back to my hotel. Llewellyn's going to be in the hospital another day or two. Tomorrow I'll go get the money, return to my boss. I don't even need to get it now.
Yeah.
No problem.
Just and the shot of him like walking up the stairs and like you just see
Oh.
Chigurh like appear behind him.
This is one of those. This might be one of the scariest things in this movie to me, even though it's such a subtle thing, is that just the way it's shot again, just, going home, minding your own business. Here comes the Grim Reaper behind you.
Yeah, it's so fucking good. I love that he says, "Do you have any idea how crazy you are?" Great line. Great line.
Yeah, there's this whole scene. This is Anton getting challenged a little bit here. And Anton says to him, this is another really creepy line, just like in terms of getting inside his head and the mind of a psychopath. If the rules you followed brought you here, what was the purpose of the rule? Just showing how he sees morality and principles and like, following in like your own code or whatever. It's like, well, your code doesn't work with the indifferent nature of the universe, so your code is wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, good fucking shit. Like, and again, a weird thing to say to someone that's unsettling that you would absolutely be like, "Dude, shut the fuck up, leave me alone."
Yes. And yeah, on top of that line, again, the theme of insanity. Do you have any idea how crazy you are? And he says, do you mean the nature of this conversation?
Yeah.
And he says, I mean the nature of you.
Yeah, it's great. And then when he fucking calls Llewellyn, right? And
Well,
he's talking
Llewellyn
to
calls
him.
Carson, which
Oh,
is
right,
so
yes,
sad
yes.
because, again, it's a moment of him trying to be heroic here. If this is the anti-hero story, this is the refusal of his call to try to be a better person. He is willing to give up the money here because his wife is now threatened.
Yeah.
So he calls Carson to give up the money, but
And then
Carson
there-
is
yeah.
dead.
Their whole exchange where neither of them says anything, but he realizes like, where he's like, "Where are you going? You know where I'm going. I know where you're going." Like it's so fucking good.
And it's only the back of Llewellyn's head here. We just see from behind him, which I thought was really interesting. And this is the first time we really see him feeling defeated. His head kind of bows down as he realizes. Sorry if I talked away from the mic for a sec. Where he kind of realizes that I'm in over my head.
Yeah, and actually, I remember one of the things I learned in my acting class that I took in film school. Remember the teacher? He said, like, never hide your like face from people in like performances. And again, rules are always there, like to be broken, right? And it's this very cool choice, right? To like, he's almost so like distraught he can't face the audience, right?
Yeah.
Who has been with like part of his like inner journey the whole time.
Yeah, and like I said, so much of his kind of personality seems to be like this mask, not willing to face his emotions.
Yeah, for sure.
And now he's facing away the camera during his most vulnerable moment. Yeah, really good stuff.
Yeah, and then we get some more fucking classic Wendell and fucking Ed Tom shit. I
Yeah.
have a note. Poor Wendell, dude. He just has to deal with this guy just talking about really fucking gory like shit.
Yeah, he's telling him the story about the hotel owners who were murdering their
Yeah,
clients and apparently torturing them. And he has this really kind of morbid quote here that's also kind of a commentary on society. He's like pondering why they bothered torturing them, and he says, "I don't know, maybe the television is broke."
yeah,
And
pretty
it's,
good line.
yeah.
I also like that he said that it took a guy running around in a dog collar for them to notice, not the graves that they were digging in the back
Oh,
in the
yeah,
backyard.
really good stuff. And
He's
and
got a
Wendell,
really negative view of
yeah,
like humanity, you know?
yeah, and Wendell laughs here, and Ed Tom kind of looks at him like no humor in his eyes, and he's like, "It's all right. I laugh myself sometimes." And it's like, what else can you do?
Yeah, and you can tell Wendell just like laughs because he's like so like uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I also think it's very interesting because Ed Tom does have this very negative view of humanity, but he is like doesn't act in that way.
Yeah, he holds on to his humanity,
Like
which
he's
is
very
what makes him the
proper,
hero of the
very
story,
like
right?
yeah, he's a very proper like gentleman and stuff. You know, I think that's a cool little like juxtaposition for him.
Absolutely.
And when she when when he's fucking um oh, never mind. Well, he goes back to then we get the whole sequence of him going over the border,
Yep.
and like I said, he responds so differently to the whole Nom thing this time. He's like, "Yep, 2 tours," tells them like the dates, and you know the thing with the cop. You're like, of course he's gonna let him buy. Are you veteran? You know, of course he's gonna let him buy.
Yeah, and you can also see that Llewellyn struggles with authority here, where
Yeah.
he does, even though he needs the cop's assistance here, he's still giving him a lot of lip and a lot of attitude.
Yeah, I mean, he gives them kind of like short answers, you know.
He's being a little coy with him and like kind of mocking some of his questions, I think, or like not giving him the straight answers.
There's some of that Cohen-esque dialogue there, you know.
Yeah.
It's gotta be. And then I love he goes back to the clothing store and the guy's just like, how those Larrys holding up? It's again this sort of commentary on like this sort of culture of like, oh, let me be like friendly, but like not be like, why are you missing your fucking like not asking the out like why are you missing your clothes?
It's
like
unusual.
not getting into his business, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was fucking funny. I love that. And then the part I was just laughing about is like he fucking calls Carla Jean, right, and is talking, and you hear the mom in the background, and she says, "Be all right, I got the cancer." This is so fucking funny, dude.
Yeah, and this is a really sad scene because this is their last conversation. And I love that Carla, like, because Llewellyn isn't and Josh Brolin isn't exactly giving the most like subtle. I mean, he's not giving the most obvious that he's hurt performance, right? It's very subtle. He's maybe talking a little more grunted, but like I love that Carla Jean immediately picks up on it. And,
Yeah.
like, you're hurt, ain't you?
I can hear it in your voice.
Yeah. And again, him trying to, mask. He's doing the masculine thing, trying to mask that anything's wrong.
It's not just hurt physically. It's like defeated psychologically almost in a way, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and so this is when he tries to, rendezvous with her because he's like, well, I need to have her at my side then where he wants to get her out of the country. Yeah.
And tells him to go to El Paso, right?
Yeah, and it really does feel like they're setting up this kind of big showdown between Llewellyn and Sugar, but just big old subversion.
Yeah, I do love the way he busts into the fucking building.
Yeah.
Just immediately shoots the Stephen Root.
Yeah.
And the way he when people like choke on blood,
Yeah.
he shoots him in the throat and he's like, oh, it's so fucking
And he just watches
brutal.
him die.
Yeah,
coldly.
and I love the conversation of like, why did he hire Wells or whatever? And he's like, well, he wanted like a diverse strategy or whatever. And he says, no. You pick the one right tool.
Yeah.
And that's a further sort of like glance into his whole sort of like philosophy, right? And there is this question of like, is it really a philosophy or is it like a way of validating
Justifying
his like ego?
Yeah,
and his
a bit of both.
Yeah, I think it is like that for a lot of people.
I was about to say, I think that's kind of human nature, is that it's a mix of your morality, but also just like justifying your behavior and why you are the way you are.
Of course, my code of ethics puts me at the top of like the pyramid of like most moral humans, right?
Right, and so when you put a psychopath in that
Yeah.
mind state. It's very scary.
Yeah, fucking terrifying. And I love how the guy says, like,
You're
"Are
gonna
you gonna shoot me?" And he says, "Do you see me?" You know, fucking good shit, dude.
creepy, so creepy. Grim Reaper.
And then we'll have a callback at the end where he says that again. Well,
Yeah,
where he says like a variation. He says, "You didn't see me."
right.
It is very interesting to see his composure in this scene versus when he
Yeah,
just does it later on.
absolutely.
And then we get fucking full on Carla Jean's mom in the fucking backseat of the taxi. She's so fucking funny,
I
dude.
Is it the same taxi driver that brought that Llewellyn had earlier? I think it might be because they have that shot of him looking through the rear view. And I'm like, I think that might be the same guy. I'm not positive here, but I think that might be the same taxi driver
Perhaps.
that got the jackpot earlier. Almost got the
Perhaps.
jackpot.
But yeah, she's so fucking funny. Do you know how many people I know in El Paso? And she holds up the 0. God, it's so fucking great. And then the fucking guy and the the dude coming up to help in the suit too.
Yeah.
Like, and she said, "Thank God there's one gentleman left in West Texas." She also says, "It's not often you see a Mexican in a suit."
Yeah, and this is another desolation of spirituality I have here for him helping her, where there's one gentleman left in West Texas, and the one gentleman is a cartel murderer.
Again, it's this whole commentary on like society is becoming like less civilized. You
Yeah.
know, like people are like becoming more like becoming
Colder,
colder and
yeah.
indifferent towards one another. But yeah, she's fucking funny. I love that.
Did you
shit.
catch? So they do show the cartel following their taxi. Did you?
Yeah.
Did you? What does he say? The cartel leader when they're behind him. Do you remember? It's something in Spanish. I know what it was. It's something. Just it's like one word he says. It's probably just something like soon or I don't know.
No, I don't remember, but yeah, it wasn't something of note. It was just like what made sense.
Sure. And this is again trying to do the right thing, but it's too late. Carla Jean calls up Ed Tom, and basically tells him where Llewellyn will be.
Yeah. Love that shit. I also then him getting his car jumped. I love the line where he says to him, "Can you get those chickens out of the bed?" Right? And then it like cuts immediately to him spraying the feathers out of the back. But their
This one
interaction
hurt, man, because this guy's so nice.
their interaction is great. It is like sort of this further commentary on like, how people, I want to say man versus man in sort of like a man interacting, like humans interacting with one another way. There are these we've said before, people like are like helpful and stuff.
Yeah,
you
and
know?
he's trying to be really nice. Yeah, I forget what the context is, but he's like, "I've been there before, brother," or whatever, like on wherever he's going or something
Yeah.
like that. He's just trying to relate to him, be a nice guy, help him out. Gets murdered.
Poor guy. Off-screen murder though.
Yeah, and very fitting to our theme in contrasting the previous hotel, which was the Regal Hotel. This is the Desert Sands Hotel,
It is the desert. It is indeed the Desert Sands Hotel.
where we kind of get the, the saddest thing in this. Well, and maybe not the saddest, second saddest thing in this movie, perhaps.
But the interaction too with him and the lady.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah, just looking for what's coming.
Yeah.
Yeah, but no one ever sees that.
That's exactly
It's
what I
really
wrote
great
down.
foreshadowing.
Beer is what's coming.
And she says, "No, and he says, 'No, ma'am, I know what beer leads to.'" And she says, "Beer leads to more beer." And then yeah, the fade to black. I think all the transitions so far have been pretty straightforward, or not like super noticeable.
Yeah,
transitions.
this one's noticeable. That's a good point.
Yeah, it is this like full on fade to black here. There's another really interesting transition, which is a crossfade later on that I'll mention, but just like the fade to black, because it is like sort of this implication of like time passing and his death happening off screen.
Yeah.
And like the fucking camera, like, and her dead in the pool.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, like,
Yeah.
what the fuck happened?
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say, I love that we don't really get a clear picture of what happened here. You can kind of try to imagine. I'm guessing he took her up on the beer. They were hanging out by the pool. When the cartel showed up, they started firing. He was able to get to his room and maybe even get a gun, but he died in the doorway. Because why else would they kill the girl in the pool unless they just saw? Because they saw them? Because she saw them?
Are there more dead people? Yeah,
I don't think
who
so. I
knows?
think it's just the girl in the pool and Llewellyn.
Yeah. Who knows? Who knows? I love, again, the unsaid, the implied. Great visual storytelling. And the way you just sort of see him laying there, very unceremonious death, you know?
Yeah, and this is about the point in the viewing the first time watching where I really just started getting thrown off. Like, whoa, what the hell is this movie now? There's still a good chunk of movie here, and now he's dead. And I do think this is when the movie becomes more cerebral because the cat and mouse chase is over for the
Yeah.
most part. Well, there's a little bit more of Ed Tom and Sugar, but for the most part, it's like the stakes of the movie are kind of done, and then it becomes this kind of more like commentary discussion.
Yeah, this scene too with Tommy Lee Jones, he looks so fucking old when he's like looking at Llewellyn's dead body. And then the next sort of notes I have after that are about his conversation with the other sheriff, the El Paso sheriff,
Yeah.
where green hair and bones in their
Yeah,
noses.
I wrote that
was
down
like,
too.
see, dude, punk rock, dude. It's a good time
Important to the
for
setting.
it, dude. You know.
Yeah.
And then that's the where he says, "Once you stop hearing sir and ma'am, the rest will follow." And it's again a comment on sort of politeness, proper etiquette. I think maybe caring for one another, right?
Yeah.
So that proper etiquette representative of compassion for
Yeah.
one another.
Yeah, and he has this line too, where he says like money and drugs, like that's what it's all about. But what does it mean? What's it all leading to? Just again, yeah, commentary, especially on the money aspect of it, is like, all right, you got your money, Llewellyn, but like, where did that lead you?
Yeah, for sure. And I like that he feels like he goes back and he sees the lock is blown off.
This time he pulls the gun.
And this time he pulls out his gun. He also goes back to a crime scene.
Yeah.
Which is like something he refused to do like twice
Yeah.
earlier.
That's a good point.
Don't feel the need to do that. So it is this sort of like breaking of the pattern.
And just like the kind of final step of always being one step behind. Because literally, like if he opens that door just a little bit faster, like they do have this confrontation.
Yeah. And then the tension, where we see Sugar in the shadows and we're like setting it up like that he's going to go in there super tense and then he's not there.
And this is kind of his hero moment too, because it's like he has this gut sense from all of his years of experience that Sugar is in the room and he's right. And just the bravery it would take to face that and open the door anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like I love the sound of like the pipes, and then we get him sitting on the bed, I think, like in the crime scene. It's just it's actually I think when he goes into like the bathroom or something, he like turns on a light and you just hear like this like rattling like going off and it's like super quiet. It's just like really fucking unsettling moment, and you just really feel the weight of no music there. And then this is where the really cool second transition is a crossfade of the coin on the ground with the screws over like from the vent. And then it's like crossfades into like the desert. And then this is like sort of, I felt like it was drawing this connection between taking chance versus taking things into your own hands. And the desert is this isolated place where you are either at the whims of chance or you must be self-reliant.
Yeah. And this whole scene of him talking with Ellis,
Barry Corbin.
This scene is jam packed with interesting dialogue. You could dissect this for a while. I couldn't get down most of it because it just seemed like every line was full of some symbolism or like deep metaphor.
My favorite one was well all the time you spend trying to get back what's been took from you, more is going out the door.
Yeah, that was a really good line. Yeah. And who is this guy? Is he the
He's
previous
like
sheriff or?
I don't know. Because the way he's kind of saying like Uncle Blank on this, I'm like, is it his older brother? Is it his cousin? Maybe like
there might have been some familiar relation there. Yeah, it's a very interesting scene for multiple. Like to not introduce this character at all and just have him kind of seek him out to have this conversation is interesting. And kind of bizarre.
I for some reason thought it was his dad, and then I realized no, because like this guy's only like 6 years older than Tommy Lee Jones. But yeah, I don't know. It's very. I love it though that we don't really need to know that. Like we just need to know that they're both like lawmen, right?
Yeah.
And sort of like how they feel about like the responsibility. Also, he does say like that his wife writes him letters about family affairs, right? So I figured that it was probably some sort of like familial relationship.
Yeah, I think that makes sense too. It could be his father-in-law, maybe.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah.
I like that he makes a fresh pot of coffee once a week.
That's fucking disgusting.
I also he has this line about the cats. Some of them are half wild, some of them are outlaws.
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
And yeah, this is kind of a little bit of the I don't know, the thesis or just on terms of Ed Tom's kind of psychology here. I always figured as I got older, God would come into my life, and it's just yeah, this statement of like feeling like it would all eventually make sense, but he's kind of feeling more lost than ever. He feels overmatched. He says. Ellis says to him,
Can't stop what's coming.
"Yeah,
It
that,
ain't waiting on you. That's vanity.
yep,
That's actually I said it earlier about the fucking like with another quote, but this is really actually like full on. This is what the movie's about.
yep, totally." He also says, "What you got is nothing new. This country is hard on people." Which No Country for Old Men. It's kind of the closest they get to a title drop here. Uh,
Peter Griffin would have loved it. But yeah, I love that. The can't stop what's coming. It ain't waiting on you. That's vanity. So fucking awesome. And it really kind of like points to the flaws of like Llewellyn and Anton Chigurh.
yeah,
You know, like the flaw of every man. To think that the word like you were somehow
that you're the main character.
written into this like
Yeah.
story. Like, nah, man, it is cold and indifferent. So well stated, and kind of like in a way that I feel like kind of like prompts action instead of like nihilistic chin stroking. It's like, man, the world's not gonna wait for you, dude. That's vain to think that. Like, so
Yeah.
go and do your shit, dude.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Next scene, Carla Jean buries her mother.
Yeah, I did want to say though, I love that when he says where'd he die. That's such a great question that he asks him after he tells the whole
Mm.
story.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, in like the year
1908.
1909, I think is what he says. 1909, something like that. But what he really means is like, how soon after he got shot did he die?
Yeah.
And it's just really kind of uncovering more of fucking Ed Tom's like psychology.
Yeah, and that's a good point too, because so much of what we talked about is kind of the dehumanizing of these corpses and stuff. And for Ed Tom, it's like, no, I want to know, like, how'd he go? You know?
Yeah. Good shit. But yeah, Carla Jean burying her mom. And, we knew that she had the cancer. So we knew that she didn't have long to live. As she told us, I got the cancer. She says it again in the taxi cab too. It's really good. But I think another top level, just such an amazing scene. Carla Jean confronted with Anton Chigurh. I love that she wants to. She's like, I need to sit down. Like these little touches.
Yeah.
Are
Again,
so beautiful.
sitting down theme. I don't know if that's a theme or not, but it's there. And
Being weary,
Yeah,
it's
weary.
exhausting to so often be confronted with the cold indifference of the universe.
I do have that line. I need to sit down, and in parentheses I wrote next to it, "Run, girl!" Like, what are you doing? I get she's defeated, and like that's kind of the point, but like, come on, there's some creepy dude sitting in your room, and she knows immediately. Just run for it.
Dude, no way, because of how much it embodies what she says.
Yes, I know. This
Where
is
she
the heroic
says, like,
moment
the
of the
coin
movie.
don't have no say.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna call it. Like, it's in your hands.
No,
Just like it's in her hands to fucking take a seat and face it head on, unlike her husband did.
Exactly, yeah. So no, if movie-wise, of course, she sits down and has this conversation, which I do think is the most heroic moment of the movie and the most that Anton is actually challenged in the movie, even if it's this small little, like...
If it's real life, Connor, and you're running away, I don't know if I can do this with you anymore, dude.
if I don't confront the killer and challenge his moral philosophy.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love that she stands up to him here because, like we said, if we're the guy at the shop, we're just like, okay, man, flip the coin, okay. Like, I love that she's like, no, it's not the coin, it's you. It's always been you.
Yeah, it sets it up. It sets it up like as a very like sort of. It's one of those things that you always love to see where someone says to you, in like a movie, it's like sort of presented, oh, look at this, like in this scene, you're like, wow, yeah, so true. And then later on, they like give you the counter argument for it, where you're like, oh shit, yeah, you're right. Like, you feel like you've gone on this sort of like journey, like intellectually, just kind of like showing those two scenes with the different like spins on them.
Yeah, unfortunately, the last line of the scene is still Anton kind of giving his last retort where, yeah, she says, the coin don't have no say, it's just you. And he says, I got here the same way the coin did. Chilling.
Yeah. Again, and this is a great highlight. I like what I was saying is that by using chance, he surrenders his responsibility.
Yeah.
He's just part of the chaos.
Yeah.
She reminds him of his participation, and he is frustrated. So he has to say, again, he has to reiterate, no, I'm not man, I'm nature. I am the chaos
That's such a good
embodied.
call. Yeah. That's
Yeah,
a really
he
good way to
wants
put
to
it.
be the coin. He wants to be that random chance. And it's like, what I love is that, we're going to see that, like, immediately after this scene, no, man, you are just subject to the fucking chaos, just like all of us.
This is a really interesting
Wild choice.
scene. Yeah, and right before that, just again the subtle visual storytelling here, where we don't see her die, but we see him checking for blood on his shoe on the porch,
Yeah.
just to give us that confirmation.
Yeah.
And yeah, this is another one of those scenes that just always stuck to me. Like,
It's also
what exactly are they saying here when he gets hit by
it's
the
also,
car?
I just want to say with her, he does, like, it is part of his whole, like, weird, like,
To keep
morals,
blood
right?
off his feet.
No, he
Oh,
he
go ahead.
promised Llewellyn he was gonna kill her, like,
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting, yeah, to keep the blood off his feet also
Right, yeah,
as well.
because when Carson's blood is coming towards his feet, he puts
Yeah.
him up on the bed. He takes his socks off earlier on, so maybe it's about not leaving a trace. Maybe
Yeah,
it's
for
like
sure.
not
But
getting- not
yeah.
really actually confronting his inner darkness or whatever.
So true. But yeah, dude, he fucking gets in a car crash too.
Yeah, and so this is such an interesting scene because in a movie that's so much about the cold indifference of the universe, this does feel like this kind of moment of slight justice, like this is the most justice you're going to get from the universe. And it's also kind of like playing on the theme of this is going to be a hard life. He can't go to a doctor. He's going to go have to take care of this himself and all that.
Yeah.
And just, I guess it's almost like a promise to the audience that, like, yeah, he might get out of this alive, but it's going to be a horrible life
Yeah.
kind of thing.
I love this call. It is, like, again, feel like the universe is so cold and indifferent that, like, even bad people or people who think they are, like, one with this chaos will, succumb to it as well.
Yeah. And yeah, the kids come up on him again. The theme of sitting. He says, "Let me just sit here for a minute," and takes a sit on the curb.
He buys the shirt like Llewellyn bought the jacket,
Yeah, and part of his principle, he insists on him taking the money.
Yeah, and the other kid is just like, part of that money is mine. He's like, dude, what the hell? No.
Yeah, and it's funny, but it's also
Yeah.
a little bit of that spiritual desolation here.
Yeah.
Like, they're just
Absolutely.
immediately, getting torn apart by the money.
So fucking great.
Yeah, he gets away, and then I think we get the last scene in the movie here.
Yeah, where Ed Tom is, Loretta and Ed Tom are actually wearing blue, and I think he's wearing yellow. She's wearing, like, blue, and I love him talking about the dream he had, and he reflects that he's older than his dad ever was by 20
Yeah.
years. In a sense, he's the younger man. Really, really cool, interesting, very thought-provoking, and
Yeah.
kind of like maybe highlighting how the world is changing. There is this sort of, like, wildness, this, like, violence and aggression, but people are living longer as well. Right?
Yeah, and it's kind of a take to, like, psychologically, he's looking to his father for guidance here in his dream, but his father never had the issue of No Country for Old Men because he never grew to be an old man, and so he has to face what it's like to kind of be left behind by the world more
Yeah.
than his father did.
Yeah, the two dreams are super interesting. The second one to me is definitely the more interesting one, with the horn with the fire.
Yeah.
Something that I didn't really know about, like, but how they used to carry fires in the old. Like, I
Yeah.
love all of the little details of it, and how he says he knows it's his father going off to, like, heaven, where he's going to, like, where he will join him one day.
Yeah.
Really beautiful.
And before we analyze the dreams a little more, there is just kind of on the theme of kind of determinism and having a part to play in this. He's asking his wife, like, do you want to go, or like, I think I'm gonna go do this, and she says, I can't plan your day.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like him trying to kind of offset the burden of free will a little bit. And she's like, no, this is your life. Like,
Yeah, he's trying to find his place now.
yeah. And so, yeah, getting into these dreams, this has always been the part of the movie where I have, like, I've always thought it was evocative. I always thought it was really interesting. But it wasn't really until this viewing that I feel like I kind of clicked with what the meaning of this ending is here and what they're trying to say. Because it is such an abrupt ending, right? He just kind of reads out this kind of abstract, slightly unsettling, slightly hopeful dream, and then just cuts to black,
Good shit, dude.
Yeah, and
Good shit.
he says, so the first dream on the theme of money and just kind of the commentary on this movie and our greed and money and stuff. He says, yeah, we met up in town. He gave me some money. I think I lost it. And just the fact that he's so like flippant about it is just because it doesn't matter, right? It was just money, whatever. But what really matters is this second dream that's
Really,
super
it's
important to
interesting to me
him.
because I feel like when he says, I think I lost it, he looks kind of heartbroken to me.
Oh, really? Yeah, I
Yeah,
took it more as just like kind of
I felt like he
whatever.
was like, kind of
Mm,
like he felt like he hadn't, like he had a responsibility and he, in a way, like
shirked it.
did not fulfill it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Not
interesting.
so much that he shirked it, but like that he was unable, like he wanted to, but he didn't.
That's a really good take too. Yeah, interesting. Again, like why it's so interesting to talk about this movie because it's like so much interpretation, especially with dreams. Uh, and yeah, just some of the lines of this last dream when he's just talking, he was fixing to make a fire somewhere out there in that dark and cold, and just talking about how like he knew that he'd be out there waiting for him, and yeah, cuts to black, credits, and so when it first cut to credits, I was thinking about what are they trying to tell me with this scene? And it took me a little bit. I actually kind of like got up and like I said, this is the most I ever kind of went back and reflected on my notes, and it kind of clicked with me like maybe like 20, 30 minutes later or something. And I wrote that Ed Tom is looking for guidance from his father, and we are looking from guidance from the movie. Uh, but instead, the movie asks us to face our own spiritual desolation, just like Ed Tom can't get guidance from his father in the dream. We have to look inward, and Ed Tom has to look inward.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can't have your hand held into contending with the absurdity of reality. Like you must experience that yourself. I think it is ultimately this idea, like all of these things are like thought of and like presented to you, but you are the one who must ultimately face what the your own vanity in
Yeah.
thinking that the world revolves around you, and realizing that you're simply one small piece in this like greater mosaic of existence, right? The cold indifference of the universe, and how like I think my read, being the kind of person I am, is like doesn't mean we have to be cold and indifferent to
Yeah.
one another. Like
And I think they emphasize that with all the people that are like friendly, as we talked
yeah,
about. Yeah.
for sure. They're like some of the people aren't even like super friendly, but they're just like, doing their job, and they're not like unpleasant too.
Yeah.
Like yeah, again, where the casting is really, really great.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people that try to help Llewellyn out throughout the movie, and, you know, often to their detriment or, things like that.
Guy gives them a ride, man.
Yeah, and yeah, it's interesting because I love this movie a lot and agree it's, if not the best, one of the best movies we've watched so far. And yet, like when I finish it, I just feel like I felt like a little sad and hollow. Like it is a depressing watch. At least I felt like it was a heavy watch, but so good, so thought provoking, so deep and meaningful. I think it kind of fits into what I was thinking about desert movies, like in
Yeah,
general,
for
like
sure. Absolutely.
very reflective, existential, has a lot to say about humanity.
A lot of commentary on isolation, I think, on self-reliance as well. And yeah, that how small we are in the face of the universe.
Yeah.
I give it an S tier.
I also give it an S tier. This is my second S tier so far, but yeah, and I before I watched it, we had even had a conversation a while back where I was like, yeah, I think No Country for Old Men is an S tier movie. And going into this again, it'd been a long time since I've seen it. I was like, will it live up to that hype? Like, will like, and in like maybe like 30, 40 minutes in, I was like, yeah, this movie just like it's just the presentation alone and just like, yeah, how subtle and well put together and immersive, and just like how much it pulled me in through its filmmaking. Absolute, like, yeah, I would say it's a masterpiece. It's so good.
Yeah, amazing film. Love it. Very exciting. And as we've touched on, definitely hitting all those like big deserty themes. And speaking
100%.
of deserties,
Yeah, should we talk about what we're doing next week?
yeah, from drinking milk to I drink your milkshake.
I drink it up.
We are watching Good Burger. No, we're watching There Will Be Blood.
Yeah.
Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, and it's interesting because these two movies came out the same year, and I think
Yes.
we're both contending for film of the year. And I believe No Country for Old Men is our best or our first Best Picture winner. And yeah, very excited to watch There Will Be Blood again because I've been wanting to watch it again for a while. And I think there are a lot of similar vibes between these movies coming out at the same time, so it's gonna
Yeah,
be interesting to
absolutely.
compare them.
And we might have a guest for that one. So yeah, stay tuned. But thank y'all so very much. Hope you enjoyed this 2.5 hour, philosophical consideration of the unknown, the cold indifference of the universe, our place as a tiny speck on a tiny dot in a remote region of the galaxy.
Thank you for sharing this tiny speck with us all.
Yeah, and again, we are Cinema Forecast. That is Cinema Fourcast. Find us on social media, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that shit. Thank you so very much. We appreciate y'all. See you next week.
Later.